So we won't be using the chat for the entire webinar, but just as we wait for a few more people here, feel free to go ahead and put in there where you're from. Really nice to see where everybody's coming from. It seems like all across Ontario, people are joining us from. So that's great to see. So welcome everybody. There likely will be a few more people joining us, but without further ado, we are going to get started. So first off, we'd like to acknowledge the land before we begin. We respect and recognize the inherent rights and governance of the Anishinaabeg Pre-Confederation. We acknowledge the rights of the Anishinaabe as legally recognized in the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and Williams Treaty of 1923. Indigenous peoples in the area are of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi lineage. Mohawk people from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy also reside in the area and have historical connections to both Southern and Eastern Ontario. I personally would also like to acknowledge some of my teachers and role models, including Anthony LaForge, Roger Jacqueline, Richard Naganosh, Cheryl Judge, and Samantha Naganosh, who have taught me so much and for whom I am extremely grateful to learn from. So unfortunately, as we enter another Ontario-wide lockdown due to COVID-19, I'm so thankful and grateful to be able to host our annual Indigenous Lands and Resource Conference with the assistance of our partners, the Georgian Bay Biosphere. Although we look forward to seeing and meeting everyone in person at this event each year, this is the next best thing. So Zhiishiigwe again for being here virtually, and here's hoping next year we could do this in person. I hope you have all been able to stay safe and healthy and continue to wish good health on everyone. As I mentioned, this year's conference webinar series is offered through a partnership with the Georgian Bay Biosphere. I want to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to their assistance with planning, organizing, and co-hosting this event. Zhiishiigwe. They are one of 18 UNESCO World Biospheres here in Canada, and I may be biased, but to me, it's one of the most beautiful, especially because of how ecologically unique it is, and the fact it is the largest freshwater archipelago on Earth. Designated in 2004, they are a registered charity with an office in Parry Sound, which is where I am today. Magnetawan First Nation is within the Georgian Bay Minnetonka Biosphere region and is located on the Magnetawan River near Britt, Ontario. Magnetawan First Nation is 4,700 hectares of land with beautiful mosaics of wetland, forest, and rock barren habitat. Our Department of Lands, Resources, and the Environment works closely with both leadership and the community to facilitate the development of programs, outreach, and research. Speaking on behalf of our department, we are proud to host this conference each year since, I believe, 2014 to bring people together, build partnerships, and ensure the sustained protection of our lands and resources for 7 generations and more. So we have an incredible lineup of presenters over the next 2 days, followed by a group conversation on day 3, focused on the learning and questions from the conference, as well as coastal conservation initiatives. Although we hope you will be able to join us for all 3 days, we understand this is a large time commitment. So we will be recording the presentations today and tomorrow, and we'll be sharing the link and other resources by email after the conference. We're also live streaming as we speak to YouTube, so hopefully that link can be shared as well. For those who express an interest on the registration to attend the discussions on day 3, a separate Zoom meeting link will be emailed at the end of day 2. We're also going to provide a quick survey tomorrow at the end of the day that will help us get a sense of questions and topics to cover on day 3 And it's also where you can enter to win some of our incredibly amazing, wonderful door prizes, which you're going to hear and see a little bit more about later today. So please note that we're also going to be using the Q&A tool instead of the chat. So if you have a question at any time in the webinar, please put it in the Q&A. We will provide your questions to the presenters during the question periods and the bio breaks instead of having them at the end of each presentation. But you're welcome to submit the questions at any time to the Q&A feature. So for those of you who don't know, it's usually located at the bottom of your screen, and it just says Q&A. So to get us started on today's webinar, we are extremely fortunate to be joined by Christine and Hilton King, who have graciously agreed to help start our conference in a good way. So in preparation for this ceremony, if you could please grab a glass of water if you don't already have one. You may also participate in the smudge if you have your own with you, or you can be holding tobacco during the ceremony, again, if you have some with you. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Christine and Hilton so that they can help us get this conference started in a good way.
Good morning, everybody.
Minokajep.
Okay, I'm going to, I've got my smudge going here. And I'm going to take a little smudge. Smudge my eyes, smudge my mouth, smudge my ears, smudge my heart, and smudge my whole body. And I'll offer a prayer first, and I'll give a little bit of a understanding of that. So, Hobojo, Wamatik Dijnakaz, Migazadodam, Wasaksing Donchpa, and the Schnabe and Dow, Abading Mede. Chimi Witch Mishomis, Nagabi Wase, Ajay and Nongum. Chimi Witch and Da Kit Nongum, Gijagat, Wewena Jamano, Ganawa Mag, Nagiwa, Jabamadis, Meanwhile, Wewena Jagano na. Mi Witch Gaish Kikimikwa, Ogamisha Yang, Matsu Win. Ogamisha Yang, Mijam, Ogamisha Yang, Nebe. Ogamisha Yang, Wisayak. Meanwhile, Ogamisha Yang, Nisa Win. Sama Nabagdana, Wabanang, Zhao Nang, Nagabianang, meanwhile Giwednang, Naramushan Jamoshka Gabuyan, meanwhile Jazongdayan. Kinagego Gamisha Yang, Osa Bamadza Win, Widokushnang. Janamayang, Koyak, Jabamos Sayang, Chami Witch Gizamanado. Gamisha Yang Gay gets Sanan, Miigwich Gabanojinan, Wewena, Jamaji Quad, Homigwich. And that prayer is it's a morning prayer, and but I also call it I like to call it a gratitude prayer, because what it does is it acknowledges pretty well everything in creation, you know, from the children to us to everything in creation that we were given so freely in the beginning. And one of our teachings are connection we have to Creator is something that we should be doing on a regular basis. You know, when we're in prayer, using song, using ceremony, that keeps that connection strong to Creator. And so, you know, when we do this, we're letting Creator know that we're still doing those original instructions. We're still using this smudge. We're still trying to help each other. You know, we're still doing those things that he had originally instructed us to do. And like even the smudging process, you know, the smudge is I used sage this morning. You know, it's to cleanse to give us a good cleansing, you know, so we see good things, we hear good things, we say good things, and we feel good things. And that medicine is something that, you know, like I said, with this virtual world, you know, I'm sending those prayers and those thoughts and that smudge to you, because I think that's really the strength of our medicines. And so, again, coming together, and doing what everybody's doing, in on Turtle Island today is being creative, one thing. We're also doing, we're looking 7 generations ahead, and to see about the other ones that are coming, and also looking back to those 7 generations, so what we've been left by the wayside, so that we can carry on this work in whatever capacity we're doing. So I want to say Miigwech, for inviting me to share a little bit.
Hi, Hilton. Sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if you're covering your microphone, perhaps, if it's lower down or something, but we're just having some difficulty hearing you.
How's that?
That's great.
Okay.
Miigwech.
Did you hear most of it?
Yes.
Okay. Because I don't think I'll remember what I said.
No worries. No, you're good to go now. Miigwech.
Okay. So again, I just want to say Miigwech to everybody for participating and coming together and doing what's good for creation. This conference is that's up to us. To with the preservation, and that's part of we're the caretakers. So that's up to us and what we do, and doing it together is really a form of what we do best. Relationships. With each other. So I want to say Miigwech, and I'll pass it over to my Donis. Miigwech.
Miigwech. Manogigajep wabkinikwa dijnikaz megazed dodam wasaksing donjaba and Anishinaabe and Dao Nijo Medeo. Miigwech Dede for the opening, for the prayer. My dad also has a really awesome voice too, for singing. But I'm going to talk about the water and do the water ceremony part for us. So I smudged, and I noticed my computer's kind of lagging a little bit, which is really unusual. I have really good internet. Regardless, I will get through this. And I would also like to acknowledge James coming to us from Stellenbosch, South Africa. That's pretty awesome. I don't know what time it is over there for you, but Miigwech for joining us. And Miigwech to Alana for your enthusiasm this morning, and for your coordination, and for your organizing us, and the reminders are really great to get as well, as I sometimes do forget that I'm supposed to be doing something. So I appreciate that very much. Oh, Isaac Shelley, you have a question? No, I guess not. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to offer a water song, and I'll put the link to the where you can hear this and where you can read about the story, but I'll share about it first. And the song comes from an auntie from the lodge that I go to, and that's the Three Fires Lodge, and it's a Magnetawan society, kind-hearted people. That's what it translates to. And so my teachings come from that lodge, but my teachings also come from my Gitzimak, my parents, my first and forever teachers. And they also come from my community, and that's where my learning started, was in my community. And I was fortunate to attend school in my community. And my auntie, Joshko Gijigo Kwepan, and my other auntie, Ozawa Nimki Kwe, and community members saw a vision for our community members, for our children, to have culture as our foundation as we grew up, to know who we are as Anishinaabe. And so they instilled teachings and culture right within our curriculum. So there were some days that we weren't in school, we were at the lodge, and we were learning. We were learning about smudging. We were learning about prayer, songs. My favorite song is the feast song. And I laugh because my uncle Bamasage Bun, he used to tease me about that. And he used to say, oh, your favorite song is coming up. And there's just something about the song. It's not because we're going to eat, although that's one reason, but it's just a really beautiful song. All of our songs are really beautiful. And as Anishinaabe Kwe, we have so many songs that we can sing for the water, so many prayers that we can offer to all of creation, not just to the water, but to all of creation. So I wanted to just back up and give you a little bit of where my knowledge comes from, where it continues to come from. And within our lodge, within the Three Fires Society, we have another society, and they're the Magnetawan. So they're the women in our lodge, and they have lines, generations within their line of water caretakers. And so it's passed on to each generation, the teachings and the songs, but we also learn within the lodge too, if we're not a part of Magnetawan. And how you become a part of Magnetawan is when you have a line, a generation. So you have a grandmother, a daughter, and a granddaughter, and that forms a line within our lodge. And so within my family, we're getting there. I have two nieces, a big niece and a little niece, Anungos and Manitobaneses. And so one of my nieces will come to the lodge one day and help us form that line. One is 20, or she'll be 25. She'll be 26. And my other little niece, she's 10. So there's an age difference between them. But I wanted to just back up and share where that knowledge comes from. So the song that I'm going to share, it's just called The Water Song. And it was shared by an auntie in my lodge, Doreen Day. And she said these words to this body of water with her grandson every day as they drove past it. Water, we love you. We thank you. We respect you. And they said those words to the water every day. And so she was teaching her grandson as well that it's his responsibility as well to take care of the water, that it's in our lodge, it's a woman's responsibility to take care of it. And we'll hear teachings that women take that responsibility to take care of water. And for me, it's logical that women take care of water has responsibility for it, because we give life. We're able to give life. So we carry our babies within that water. And so we ensure that water is clean for that baby as it's growing. We try to ensure that it's clean. And so in our teachings and in our songs, we have knowledge that talks about how clean, how pure that water is and where it comes from, how clean and how pure it is. And there's so many songs that talk about water. And I'm so thankful that my auntie created this song for the world to know, for the world to sing. And so I try to help her in doing that. I try to help her in sharing this song and lifting this song up for the water, and lifting this song up as a human responsibility to take care of the water, because this is the only water that we have. And when I sing this and when I talk about the water, I always think about our loved ones and our family and relatives across Turtle Island who don't have potable water. And I think about them when I can turn my tap on and I can have, I live in town, it's chlorinated, but that's okay. I can still drink it. But when I go to my mom's and I turn on her tap and her water is from a spring, and it's the best tasting water that I've ever had. And I grew up tasting this water, this fresh water, and it's really cold too. Like, it gets really cold when you turn the tap on and you let it run for a little bit. I know my sister Midway, come and go quick. She doesn't run the tap, but I do a little bit sometimes. But that water, it tastes so good. And if I can, and I'm asked to do a sharing such as this, I'll bring that water with me. And in this time, we can use, if we still have sweet water, we can use sweet water within our ceremony too at this time, because the trees have run and we might have a little stock to share. And so I wanted to share that little bit about water. I'll share again tomorrow about Dr. Emoto, who did some extensive studies on water, and I think it's so fascinating. And when we think about water and how we talk to water, how we sing to water, when we're singing to water and we're praying to water, we're praying for that goodness. We're praying for it to taste good, to nourish us as well. And we think about Mother Earth and ourselves, and we're pretty much made up of the same amount of water. And so how important water is for us to take care of us. And, and that water has a spirit as well. There is a spirit in water too. And so we take care of that water as it is living, as it is a relative, as we are all a part of creation, Nindue Maganaduk, all of my relatives. And so I want to offer this song for the opening of your conference, for the work that you're going to do. As Alana had mentioned, if you have water, if you could hold it if you'd like, as as I'm offering this song. And if you know this song, I encourage you to also sing this song too. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. I just turned my camera off because I looked like I was frozen. So that's still me. That's a picture of me. So I'll offer this song, and if you can hold your water as we're offering this prayer, this song for the water. Niba Gizaga Igo Gimi Guachoani Migo Gijoani Migo Niba Gizaga Igo Gimi
Apologies, everybody. Christine, if you can hear me, it just seems to be like there's been an issue with your audio there. So I don't know if you can, we just muted you, so we're going to unmute you again and try that. Again, apologies. And Christine, if there's anything we can do on our end, just let us know.
Gizaga Igo Gimi Guachoani Migo Gijoani Migo. So I was near the end of the song, so that worked out perfectly. And then you can have a little sip of your water, and you've sung to your water, you've sung to the spirit of the water today. I hope that your technical glitches aren't for the duration of your conference. I hope that technology works for you this morning. Zhiishiigwe for joining us this morning in opening.
Yeah, apologies for that, Christine. Zhiishiigwe for both Christine and Hilton for opening our day today in a good way, and we look forward to each day this week. So again, Zhiishiigwe. Without further ado, we are going to start our presentations. So I am going to invite my colleagues Nadine Perrin and Emily Martin to turn their screens on. While they do that, I would just like to remind everybody, if during the presentations you have a question, please put it into the Q&A feature. We're going to leave the chat open to just comments, but if you have a question, please put it into the Q&A. I'm also going to put into the chat right now a link to the agenda. If you don't have one, or if you're looking for it in the emails you would have gotten, but so that is the most up-to-date agenda. There are just some very, very small changes related to day 2 and day 3. And there was also an update to one of the people who will be joining us, Kyla Judge. Her bio and background information is also included in the updated agenda. So without further ado, yeah, we're going to get started on presentations. So I am going to share my screen. All right, so yeah, I figured after that beautiful song from Christine, again, Zhiishiigwe, we could get started and tell you a little bit more about ourselves at the Magnetawan First Nation Department of Lands and Resources and what we've been doing the last few years. So my name is Alana. I'm the species at risk biologist and program coordinator, as I said, and I'm also joined by, oh, she's muted. Can you say that again?
Nadine Perrin, Indigenous. I'm the field biologist.
Emily, we can't hear you either. I think you need to not use your headphones there. I don't know why that's not working. So hopefully, if you don't mind figuring that out, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So yeah, we have each taken on some new responsibilities in our roles recently, since having to say goodbye to Corey Cosmic, who some of you may know started a new position earlier this year. So we'd all like to take a moment and say Zhiishiigwe for your guidance over the years, and we hope to continue your legacy and that of those before us by doing our part to make the world a more turtly awesome place. And it just so happened that all of our pictures here were holding baby turtles. So today we're just going to scratch the surface on some of the things we've been up to, including our road ecology and population monitoring, our incubation program and partnerships development, and our cultural outreach and education program, which is being led by our very own Emily Martin. So we're extremely fortunate to work on a number of projects, and we try to ensure that we integrate Indigenous traditional ecological knowledge, Western science, and citizen science in all that we do to benefit the land, the climate, and the community. So one of our most long-standing projects is our road ecology and monitoring program of reptile species at risk. Herpetofauna are one of the most endangered groups of animals in the world, consisting of reptiles and amphibians. And we at Magnetawan are very fortunate to be home to many of Ontario's endangered and threatened species. Since 2012, the Department of Lands and Resources has been monitoring roadways as a means to determine how the reptiles on our lands interact with the roads. And this was initiated in partnership with Dr. Litzkis's research group at Laurentian. And since then, we've continued to collect this incredibly important information and work to expand our ever-growing data set. We aim to gain an understanding of the movement patterns of our reptiles and how they are influenced by climate change, development, and land use change. This is also something that the community has been extremely helpful with, and all of their observations and reports have helped us identify various hotspots on the land. So just to give you a very high level visual, these are some of the observations that have been documented since 2012. What is most obvious is almost every inch of the roadway appears to have reptile sightings. So if we take a little bit of a closer look, you can see that there are observations pretty much everywhere. So if you zoom in, you can see how truly dense these observations are, and it certainly makes you think that the rest of the highways beyond the Magnetawan First Nation boundary look like. As I said, this information is critical in helping us find mortality hotspots, as well as to guide survey effort in adjacent habitat to these roads. So for instance, you can see here that road data from the last several years indicated a particular hotspot for snakes, including the endangered or threatened Massasauga, which actually makes up 5 of these 11 observations that you can see there. So this mapping also allows us to target areas and identify critical habitat adjacent to the roads, including gestation habitat, nesting, and hibernation sites along the roadways. So in conjunction with our road ecology work is our population monitoring program. One of our target species, like I said, is the threatened Massasauga rattlesnake, which we're very fortunate to have a healthy population of on Magnetawan First Nation. We've identified various hibernation and gestation sites across Magnetawan, which we monitor each year. And because these animals show such a high site fidelity to these locations, we can monitor certain individuals' growth, health, and movement patterns. These individuals can be identified based on their pit tag, as well as their head pattern and potentially rattle paint color. Similarly, we monitor our populations of turtles as well. And instead of pit tagging and head pattern matching, we actually can use their blotch pattern on their plastron, and we also have a notch coding system that we use. So similarly, this helps us monitor their growth and health, especially before and after hibernation. We combine this with radio telemetry to track their movement patterns and identify critical habitats, particularly adjacent to roadways, in order to inform future mitigation measures. So we hope that by continuously and intensely monitoring our roadways and lands, that we can contribute to long-term data set and inform future mitigation for highway and road development, land use change, as well as climate change. So to help with this, in partnership with the McMaster Eco Hydrology Lab, we recently installed an eddy covariance tower in one of our large wetland systems to help gather information on some of the micrometeorological properties and how they may be impacting environmental parameters such as the hydrology and thermal conditions of various habitat types. Nadine, you're muted.
Do that all the time. Ani, everyone, and I'm talking about some of the great partners. So as you just heard, McMaster University, who worked with the Climate Tower, Eddy Tower, is one of the amazing partners we've had the opportunity to collaborate with. The integration of traditional knowledge and Western science requires the experience and expertise that is offered and accomplished by many great partners. Among these are Georgian Bay Biosphere, the Toronto Zoo, the Ministry of Indigenous and Northern Affairs, Shawanaga First Nation, the University of Guelph, WISE Lab, Laurentian University, Litska Lab, Cambrian Indigenous Professional Services, and Georgian Bay Forever. Zhiishiigwe to all those who have helped and supported us in big and small ways. I also apologize for any missing logos or organizations that were not mentioned today. We do appreciate everybody's time, effort, and expertise. Hello, Alana.
Hold on, it's just loading.
Okay. Moose and railroads and biodiversity, oh my. So we've been fortunate enough to be able to work with 3 amazing master's students. So we've been preparing for our 2021 field season last few months, and we are excited to highlight these 3 individuals from the University of Guelph WISE Lab, and Kyle is also conjunction studying with Laurentian University. So Catherine is commencing her project. She's bridging knowledge systems in moose ecology research. She's practicing the multiple ways of knowing to create an ethical space to share and collaborate information with moose ecology. And we are super excited to be able to start our work with her this spring. Kyle, this is his second year doing surveys with us. He focuses on wildlife railroad mortality hotspots and ecological factors that drive these patterns. And we are super excited to trekking down the rails with you again this summer. Claire does her master's project based community-based wildlife monitoring, prioritizing Indigenous knowledge systems and values. She's going to be working with our community and applying different environmental monitoring techniques and teachings to collect data, implementing strategies. And we are really excited, and I know our youth and community is as well, to be able to do this summer. Magnetawan First Nation also participates in the fisheries framework. This is spearheaded by Georgian Bay Biosphere. Shout out to Katrina for leading that. And this is a sharing platform to create research and knowledge sharing strategies across the eastern coast of Georgian Bay. We are also doing some preliminary work focusing on the Algonquin wolf with a potential master's candidate from Trent University, and we look forward to continuing that work and hopefully be able to start some research and have, I think I saw Shyla in the participation list. We're excited there. And we're going to probably be waiting a second while this loads. Oh, here we are. Okay. The Turtle Incubation Station at Magnetawan First Nation. So with the help of one of our other partners, the Toronto Zoo, we have developed an incubation program at Magnetawan. It helps salvage nests that are threatened along road shoulders. As some of you know, turtles are extremely long-lived species, and hatchlings have less than a 1% chance of reaching adulthood. We do our best to ensure that they make it past the most vulnerable stage and are released as hatchlings back into their homeland, wetland. Our team conducts road surveys during nesting season, and we collect under proper permits any vulnerable nests. Nest vulnerability is assessed by risk assessment to the nest proximity to road and construction work. This allows us, to the best of our ability, to ensure that the hard work of the mother turtles is not in vain, and their eggs become hatchling turtles who are then returned to the nearest safest wetland. We survey, locate, excavate, incubate, become a baby turtle nursery, and then release the hatchlings back into their wetlands. This entire process lasts from deposition in June to hatching in August, to releasing anywhere from August to October until it becomes too cold. The important part of our program has enabled us to hatch and release at a success rate of more than 80%, which is really awesome. And this allows us to give the turtles a chance to make it to adulthood. One of our favorite parts of our turtle incubation program is the community-based engagement. These photos are all from 2019, before pre-COVID. That's why there's no masks. But we were able to have all our youth and community members come. Everyone was given a cup with their baby turtle. They could give it a name. They went down into the wetland and sent their well wishes off. 2020 was a little different. We were blessed to have Christine come and do a water ceremony for our turtles, where we sent them off with good wishes for a safe life. And that was a little different, but we were still able to have our children come visit the turtles, give them kind words, and we also had some children give their turtles a song, which was really special. And we hope to be able to safely get back to a new normal this year and release our turtles with the community once again.
Hi, can you guys hear me now? Okay. Sorry, I was having issues earlier. The input was wrong, but anyway, so I am the cultural coordinator, Emily, and I just want to talk a bit about my part of the lands department. And I'll start with my place at Magnetawan. I have been a community member my whole life, obviously, and here is a couple of pictures of me with my Uncle Wilmer and Uncle Joe. And Yeah, so I started working here in 2017. I was just a summer technician, as many people here kind of started out, and I've kind of worked my way up. Usually I go to Nipissing University, but this fall I kind of took the year off and started this cultural program. So next slide. My goal here has been to bring back or kind of just start giving people the knowledge to do some traditional arts and crafts, and just like reconnect people with their traditional arts. And so I've been working alongside Amber Sandy, who some of you may know. She's really awesome. So yeah, I've done some beading. I have made salves. You can see the dream catcher, and then in the next slide, I have also made a pair of moccasins and tanned some fish skins and made a wallet out of it. And I'm currently waiting for some fur to put around my moccasins to make them a little bit more fancy. And then I'll host a workshop on how to make them. And the importance of doing this, which is on the next slide, is just that traditional art is like one piece of the huge puzzle that is keeping culture alive in our communities, which is just so important. It it plays along with keeping our traditional languages, some traditional ceremonies, storytelling, all of these important things. And art especially acts as like a form of expression and therapy, and it really gives people this sense of connectedness to not only their culture, but to our ancestors, our family, the land, and even just each other in the community. And so it gives, youth a sense of identity to really hold on to and be proud of. And that's why I am so excited to be making this and holding workshops for our community.
Wonderful. Chimiigwech, Emily. And I also just want to say it is so great to have both Emily and Nadine on our team. They both have been working at Meg longer than I have, so I have learned so much from them, and it's a privilege to work with such incredible women. So Chimiigwech. And yeah, with that, we just finished our presentation. So if anybody, like I said, has any questions regarding anything that we touched on, please put those questions in the Q&A and we'll address them during the question period, which is around 10:30. So without further ado, we're going to move on to the next speaker, Stephen Kell from Shawanaga First Nation, who is going to talk about the education and monitoring of the Massasauga rattlesnake. So we're just going to throw it over to him.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay, I don't have, it's not allowing me to put my video up.
Try again, Steve.
Yeah, it won't let me start video.
Can you share your screen?
I can. Let's put this into the slideshow view. Share. Can everyone see the start of my slide?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, Minogazep, Stephen Kell and Disney Cause. Good morning. My name is Stephen Kell. and I am the species at risk biologist at Shawanaga First Nation. Okay, so our Species at Risk project was started just 2 years ago, so it's a fairly new project. Here we have a lot of our crew members, the beautiful species themselves, and it's kind of cool presenting at this conference because this project was sort of initiated and helped along by Magnetowan Species at Risk project itself. So we just heard a great presentation by the Meg crew. And so our project was sort of modeled off their project, actually. So yeah, 2 years ago, we started our own project to try to have basically as a successful project as theirs. And today we're just going to talk about just a small piece of that. So we have all these different species here, but today we're just going to talk about just a small piece of that, the Massasauga rattlesnake. And so threats to the Massasauga. So this is general threats pulled from the species survival plan. And this is based on the Georgian Bay area. So we have development. So there's two different types of developments that are major threats, both roads and road networks. So snakes getting killed on roads or through the construction of roads destroying habitat. And then other developments, so that can be anything, buildings, urban development, housing. And then discriminate killing. So that can be through multiple different forms, but killing of individuals as you're sort of coming in contact with it. And then also climate change. And at Shawanaga, there's a major project that's happening right now, and it's been going on for a while. And it's one of the main reasons that we actually started our Species at Risk project. And it's the proposed development of the expansion of Highway 400. So taking Highway 69 and expanding it into a 400 series highway. So you can see here on this picture, we have the blue roads, which are the existing roads, but the pink road is actually going to, is proposed to be expanded. And this will be going right through Shawanaga. So this entire cloverleaf on and off ramp will be in Shawanaga. And so that will be basically taking up a lot of habitat for species. And at Shawanaga, we have a lot of species at risk. So what we want to do is basically try to figure out what species at risk are there, where they're moving, where they're existing, and then try to create a plan to have the lowest impact as possible. And so for species at risk and Massasauga specifically, we're looking for critical habitat. So critical habitat is a type of habitat that the species needs for its existence. So if you were to remove one of these, the species in that area is basically going to go extinct. And for Massasauga, that's gestation sites. So seen here in this picture, these large rocks that the females are actually going out and using for thermal regulation to incubate their the babies inside them. And then also hibernation sites, so sites that they're using to overwinter themselves during the winter. And so if both of these, or if one or the other are to get taken away in an area, there's a potential for that species to go extinct. There's other important habitat as well, like feeding habitat, but this is more common. And so if that were to be removed from one area, they can usually adjust and find some more, but these critical habitat are basically extremely important for their survival. So we have been doing a bunch of monitoring of our Massasaugas, similar to some of the work that was mentioned in the previous presentation. So we are able to go out, capture individuals in a very safe way for both us and the animal, using equipment like seen here, plastic tubes, snake hooks and baskets to collect them and very gently process the animals. So this can be in a couple different ways, whether that's pit tagging the individual, which is similar to what a dog or cat might get at the vet, which has an individual code. You can take top-down photos of them. Each snake has an individual pattern that you can use that way. And then you can also mark their rattle. As seen in this bottom left photo, we're actually painting a bit of that rattle a certain color, so we know that we've caught them. In 2020, we were using blue. So all individuals marked with that blue paint just on that one base rattle, we know that we caught it in that year. So there's different ways that we can, different uses of why we might use this. And then with the combination of road monitoring, so we had our technicians out almost every day during the summer, biking our roads. We were able to sort of figure out where our species at risk are moving. So we're looking for all reptiles on the roads, but with focuses on different species. And what we're able to create, here's just an example. Usually in presentations, we try not to show maps or data and stuff like that, just for data sensitivity. This is a pretty general map, so you can't take individual species data away from it. But what you can see here is just an example of a hotspot created from our road survey. So you can see different areas where species are crossing the roads more often than others. And when we combine this with our population data of where we are catching species, we can actually almost figure out their movement patterns, where they're moving at different times of the year. And this is all going to come into play when we're trying to mitigate that highway, and then just development in general within Shawanaga First Nation. Lastly, we're talking about education. So education is very important in sort of all aspects. So we're doing education in many different forms, whether that's just sort of presentations on the species themselves. If we're out and about around the community, we'll take every sort of opportunity we can for outreach, especially getting community members like sort of up close and personal with the animals. With rattlesnakes, that can be somewhat scary in some instances, but we're able to do it very easily and sort of safely with the protocols and the equipment that we have. So it's been a really good learning opportunity for members in different aspects. And then we were able to do different cultural events as well. So we hosted a rattlesnake walk this past summer, COVID friendly. And in this walk, we had a whole bunch of different gestation sites that we were monitoring, and we were able actually to go out there, visit some of these sites. We had a little ceremony, and then we were able to talk about both the cultural importance and ecological importance of these species, so their role in the ecosystem, but then also their role as a medicine protector. And that was a really good event, and we're hoping to host it again this year. And then lastly, so the second half of this presentation, hoping this will work here. So I'm going to show, my screen's going to go glitchy here. I'm just going to post. Can everyone still hear me fine?
Yep.
Okay. So we created, we're doing a series of films on the Massasauga Rattlesnake. So this is our first film, so it hasn't actually been viewed by anyone. So we thought a great opportunity to sort of have the premiere here during this event. And then we're hoping to make another one based more off of the sort of work at Shawanaga and some of like the techniques and things like that. But yeah, we're hoping that you'll enjoy this. So it's about a 7-minute film. I'm hoping that the audio and visuals work properly. I'm going to also try to post the link into the chat box so that if it's not working for anyone, you can just take that link out and go watch it on YouTube, either now or afterwards. Okay, so without further ado, here we go.
Along the eastern coast of Spirit Lake, Magnetawan, or what we refer to as Georgian Bay, spring has finally arrived. The warm spring sun has started arriving earlier and more sporadically, but has melted away the ice sheets and snowpack, revealing the green plants below, ready to burst with life. Coiled within its mossy chamber and awoken by the warmth of the sun, another animal begins to stir from its winter slumber. These rare and sensitive habitats offer the perfect protection against winter's frigid temperatures. Referred to as the life zone, these sphagnum moss hummocks offer a damp environment for the rattlesnakes, allowing access to or retreat from the water table, while providing a thick insulating layer to protect them from frigid air above. A Massasauga rattlesnake, Zhiishiigwe, Ontario's last remaining rattlesnake, lies burrowed deep within the tree root structure and sphagnum moss of these bogs. The morning sun has started to peek through the trees, and the warmth it brings creeps down the entrance of the snake burrows. A female Massasauga rattlesnake emerges from the burrow for the first time in 6 months, tasting the fresh air with her forked tongue to get a sense of her new surroundings. For her, it's time to choose a spot to begin warming her body. She settles on a location coiled amongst the vegetation. While her blotch pattern perfectly camouflaging her, this spot will offer her protection and all the warmth she needs from the bright sunlight. After months of lowered metabolism during hibernation, she has a buildup of lactic acid in her muscles, and she's ready to flush it out and to get rid of the aches and pains of being underground for so long. Sunbathing kickstarts her metabolism, warming her cold blood and clearing the acid from her muscles so she can move easier. Rattlesnakes don't give birth every year, and it's been 2 years since her last clutch of babies was born. She's been storing up energy in the form of fat stores for the last couple of summers to get ready for birth again. This summer, she will finally be ready to bear another clutch. If she wants to use that stored energy to mate and have offspring before winter comes, she will first need all the warmth she can get. With the sun now high in the sky, she has hit her body's optimal temperature. Time to retreat to a cooler, shaded area for the rest of the day. With the spring's cold nights and warm days, she will remain at this bog until warmer weather, which means she won't need the shelter of her mossy hummock at night. 2 weeks later, she has left the bog and moved across the land in search of a perfect location to start growing her babies. She looks for large flat rocks that will heat up fast and keep her warm, but offer her shade when it gets too hot. She is very picky about the spot she will choose, as she will remain within 2 meters of it until she gives birth, which could take months. She will move around the rock, following the sun or shade, so that she is always at optimal temperature. She will need to repeat this process every day if she hopes to develop healthy babies by the end of summer. She may not even eat this year, as the time she needs to digest her food could leave her behind schedule. After 2 months, she has finally given birth. Rattlesnakes, like many snakes in Ontario, give birth to live young. Incubating her babies inside her body rather than laying eggs means they will remain at the perfect temperature. She will remain here just long enough to recover before setting out. Her babies born without rattles will stay at this rock until their first shed. Then they will depart following their mothers sent back to the bog before the cold nights arrive. Days are now starting to get shorter and the temperature starts to drop once again. Fall has set in. She moves back to her hibernation bog in search of a burrow to safely wait out the winter months until spring arrives again. This never-before-seen footage shows the Massasauga Rattlesnake searching for her burrow, which she will follow down back to the protective life zone below. She got lucky this year, but hibernation isn't the same or as safe as it used to be. Climate changes started making winter warmer and wetter, reducing the amount of protective insulating snow on her moss hummock. Without the snow's igloo effect, the cold can penetrate deeper and deeper into her moss burrow. If the cold reaches her, it increases the chance that she will freeze. Due to climate change, her odds of emerging in the spring are getting lower and lower. But with any luck, her and her babies will emerge next year.
Okay, yeah, so that was the premiere of that film. So I hope everyone really enjoyed it. If you have any questions afterwards, or if you have any questions about hummocks, I'm sure Alana would love to answer that. That was what her part of her master's was on.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions for Steve or perhaps myself, definitely we direct you to put those in the chat. Steve, I just ask that you stop screen sharing. Perfect. Zhiishiigwe, great video as always. Steve has quite the knack for these kind of things. So great footage. So now we are going to move on to our next presentation by Cheryl and Nikki Recollette. I'm not sure if Jenna Lee is joining you as well, who helped put together the presentation. And they are going to be talking about mapping our homelands. So Zhiishiigwe for being here. It's good to virtually see you guys again. So I will pass it over to you guys to start screen sharing and to start the presentation.
Okay, awesome. Miigwech, Alana, Miigwech, everyone. Can y'all hear me?
Yep, you're good to go.
Perfect. Well, happy to be here. Happy to see everyone here. 117 participants. That's so great. So hello to all of my friends. Nikki is just going to be sharing our screen for us. So I'll let her pull up our slides. So we're coming at you from Robinson Huron Treaty. So Miigwech for the shout out, Alana. Always happy to hear that and see that. And I'm sure you guys have been hearing our radio ads on the radio stations throughout the territory. So be on the lookout for that. And also we're going to be starting, our court case is starting up soon. So also be on the lookout for that. We'll be sharing videos and updates on our webpage. So I'm Cheryl Recollet. I'm the Director of Research and Engagement here at Robinson Huron Walween to Magnetawan, and I'm joined by Nikki, who I'll let introduce herself. Or maybe she can introduce herself when she starts her slide. She seems a little busy.
Yeah,
Oh,
hi,
okay.
sorry. I hope you can hear me. I was just testing my mic and headset, so hopefully it's all good. Cheryl will let me know if not. I'm just trying to move my slides out of the way to get to my slideshow presenter here. Give me 1 second.
I could probably just start while Nikki's getting us ready here, just because I know we're limited time. So yeah, we're here to talk.
The slides though, Cheryl?
Yeah,
okay.
it's full
So
screen.
You're good to go. We're all set.
Okay, so if you can switch to the next slide there, Nikki. So yeah, Nikki and here are going to, Anthony. So Nikki and I are going to talk to you a little bit about some of the work that we're doing on the treaty, a little bit on our community engagement, a focus on our use and occupancy mapping project, which many of our communities here are joining in on our phase 1. So happy to see you all. And then Nikki's going to share with you our GIS portal and a tool that will be helpful for anybody to use to help manage our lands and territories. So next slide, please, Nick. So just going to introduce our team here. So we have our research and engagement team, which includes myself as the director. Nikki is our GIS specialist. We also have Jenny Lee, who's our GIS technician. We have Jennifer, who is our researcher and facilitator. So she goes out and works with communities and engages them on treaty history, as well as ceremony and cultural protocols, working with our cultural advisors. And we have Jolene Recollet, who has just joined our team in February and has been helping us a lot with communication. So she's been the one doing a lot of the radio ads and helping us with our treaty magazine that we're going to be launching soon. So next slide, please, Nick. So some of our engagement objectives that we work on, we go to communities to do a lot of outreach that I mentioned. This is a lot of the work that Jennifer and I do. So talk a lot about, nationhood, what does treaty governance mean to our communities? What do our relationships look like? How do we reestablish some of those relationships? How do we educate our communities and share information on treaty history? And then also research, which is the area that we're kind of focusing on and that our department focuses on in terms of use and occupancy and finding out how our people are using our lands across the territory, all of our 21 communities. Next slide, Nick. So as I mentioned, we do a lot of treaty outreach. So a lot of the treaty history we talk about what it looked like here pre-contact, what happened leading up to the treaty, what happened at treaty signing, what happened after the treaty signing, and then of course, any annuities case updates. So anytime any of your communities are interested in learning more about treaty history, just contact us and we're happy to come to your community, happy to share that. We're also working on developing a treaty history play that could potentially be traveling to all of our communities in the near future. So that's very, very in the early stages. So hopefully we'll see it in the next couple of years. Next slide, please, Nick. So use and occupancy research. So this is one of the things that I focus on quite a bit. We started this project in about 2 years ago, or no, maybe about 1.5 years ago. And we've been in the research design phase. So we've reached out to a lot of our communities. You can switch to the next slide there, Nikki. And figuring out a way to do use and occupancy research for our whole territory, for the whole, all treaty lands, right? So why did we want to do this? Well, first and foremost, we wanted to monitor the ecosystem within the treaty lands. Like, do we know what's happening on all our treaty lands? We wanted to create some sort of resource management for treaty territories. We want to determine our own understanding of our lands, and then also starting to deal with some overlapping boundary claims, with other treaties and whatnot. Next slide, please. So for our use and occupancy mapping project, we've been working with Terry Tobias. So many of you may know Terry. He's been he's worked in our communities for some time now. So we've engaged him to help us with the research design and to complete the whole research project. So we've been completing these research design workshops. We had our first one in Sudbury, I think it was last February. And then we've been having mini ones in each of our phase 1 communities. So our phase 1 communities include Nipissing, Dokis, Wasauksing, Shawanaga, Magnetawan, Henby, Point Grandine, Atikmikshing, and I believe Wanapate. So we're doing 9 communities on this side of the territory. So we've completed our research design workshops in most of these communities. We were there in Magnetawan, and now we still have to do Nipissing and Atikmikshing, since Atikmikshing just joined on recently. Oh, so the people that we wanted at our research design workshops are integral to helping us develop these questionnaires that we're going to be going out and asking our land users. So we really wanted to make sure we had, you know, very knowledgeable people from each of our communities at these workshops. So what we did when we went to, like even Magnetawan, for example, Corey helped us organize, and we went there and we sat with their land users for a whole day, and we kind of went through some parameters and trying to set up a structure for our survey. Next slide, Nick. So as I mentioned, here are our phase 1 communities that are participating, and I do believe we just got to add Wanapate to that list. You can go to the next slide, Nick. So as part of our use and occupancy mapping project, we do have a mapping working group that kind of oversees the work that we're doing here. Since it's such a large project and it's such an important project, it includes members from RHW as well as members from our legal team who are working on our annuities court case, because this information is highly valuable to them as well. Not necessarily in these phases because we're dealing with past compensation, but definitely once we get to you know, future use and occupancy protection measures and whatnot. So the working group will cover, you know, provide us guidance, oversee our project, and our committee meets monthly. I think we have a meeting tomorrow, so we provide them updates on what's happening. So we have next slide, please, Nikki. So we have an oversight committee to help us with this, so it's not just us focusing on it. So just before I pass it over to Nikki, I just kind of wanted to show you guys the maps that we're aiming to get. So Nikki, I'm going to try to share my screen if I can. Just so I can show you, Sagamok has done this mapping already, right? So Sagamok has been so gracious to kind of be our leader in this, I guess, or giving us an example of what we really want to strive to. So Sagamok has completed mapping with their community, and this is what their map looks like. I don't know if I can actually zoom in, but oh, and now you're getting a sneak peek of our magazine. Sorry, guys. So yeah, so this magazine will be coming out in the next few weeks. It's gone to the printer, so be on the lookout. But I just really wanted to show you their map. So this is their hodgepodge map, the one on the left here. And this is where they've interviewed their community members to show how they're using the land, right? So look at how many points are on their map, right? I think, don't quote me, but I think they have like 23,000 points on this map of where their people are hunting, harvesting, you know, those sort of stuff, right? So this is kind of the maps that we want to get for whole Robinson Huron Treaty. So we've been working with our first phase communities, and then we're slowly going to work our way to Balating, right? So now we're going to be doing Nipissing all the way up to Sagamok. We'll have a good chunk done over the next year or so, or maybe 2 years, depending, and then we'll make way that way. So keep an eye out for use and occupancy mapping project information, and I'll pass it over to Nikki to share a little bit on our GIS portal. Miigwech for letting me share with you guys today.
Miigwech, Cheryl. Ani bonjour, Nikki Reckle. I'm sure Cheryl already introduced me. I was a little bit muted at the beginning and my speakers weren't connected, so I missed a little bit of the opening. I'm going to go back and reshare quickly. Share sound. Okay, so share, and I want to start at the slide here. Current slide. Okay, so hopefully everything's good there. So I'm just going to do more of a little bit of a talk about the GIS and mapping our ways, some of our GIS projects and our applications. So quickly, we're using Esri software for GIS. We use it both online and the hardware, like built-in desktops on our computers. We have now myself, the GIS analyst, but we also have Jenny Lee, who is the GIS technician. We've been collecting a lot of the baseline data and historical data, data survey records that are from the Canada Land Surveys. We're also creating some virtual tours and some story maps. We got some web-based applications, and we're going to be focusing on this nation-to-nation mapping, working with our historians and telling the Anishinaabe history of the land in some way. So this is what our GIS portal looks like, but instead of me linking to it, what we've done is we had our GIS technician develop about a 5 to 6 minute video that's going to take you through how the GIS portal platform looks like, and it is an accessible link through our website you'll see here. So if Cheryl, just give me, like, you know, a sign if you can't hear it at your end once I hit the sound. It's going to take a second to start.
Ani Magnetawan community. My name's Jenny Lee Neville, the GIS technician for the RHW. I would like to quickly introduce you to our GIS portal. So a primary objective of the RHW initiative is to build internal capacity regarding GIS mapping and creating as a mapping application provided as a GIS portal by the RHW. This is a consultation tool for the treaty communities. And you can visit it at our website under Initiatives tab, and the link will appear. Once entering into the portal, there is a disclaimer that states you understand that the application is in work in progress and functionality may be limited. Now you can see the RHW communities with their logos of each. In the layers list, you'll see the available layers that are accessible to you. I'll show you some quick examples of some layers. So here is our layers list. Many layers have sublayers attached, meaning you can choose which information you would like to view. For example, I'll scroll down to watershed. So I'll select watershed, but under watershed, there are sublayers attached. So right now I'll choose the primary watersheds. So primary watershed is now selected. And once selected, you can click the 3 dots beside you to enable your pop-up. This will provide more information when clicking on the details within your map. So if you zoom out a little bit, you're able to see your primary watersheds. And because we enabled that pop-up, we can click the map for more information, and it'll say more information within here. Another layer example I will demonstrate is the admin boundaries. So I'll unselect that and go to the admin boundary. When selecting admin boundary, you can zoom right into your location while the map represents the community you've selected. So here are your sublayers, and we'll enable pop-up here. And this one is the national parks, and we'll enable pop-up there as well. So for example, we'll just zoom into Magnetawan. May take a little bit for this to clear up and load for you. So there's your Magnetawan community and the boundary for it. And when clicking, that information will pop up as well. When you are in a layer, there are many different options that you can select. The attribute table is one of them. So when clicking the attribute table, it shows more information on whichever layer that you selected. So down here, this arrow here is your attribute table. Now, because we're zoomed in to the RHW Magnetawan Reserve, it'll show you all that information here for the Magnetawan Reserve. You can press home to go back to your default extent that the portal originally started in. And the attribute table will now show you more information within the communities. As well as we selected the boundaries. So this one might take a little bit more to load because there's more details within the attribute table. But it'll show the same thing in more details here as well. And we had the park selected, which will show information here as well. So that's the attribute table. So this is a quick demo video, and there's much more to showcase within our portal. Much more layers list. We also have a base map gallery, a divided tool, bookmark, we have draws, and we have a legend, and the legend is what is selected within your layers list that is shown within the map. We have more tools over here, so you can zoom out and zoom in as well. And we have more tools down here as well. So this is just a quick overview. And if the community is interested in learning more on our portal, you can contact me at jennylee@wawindamagawin.com. Miigwech for listening, and Bamapi.
Okay, so miigwech to Jenny Lee for preparing that for us. Hopefully I can just now switch and you can hear me good, Cheryl?
Yep.
So that's her video slide. Let me just make sure. So these are just a list of some of the other layers that she went through. I guess mining claim layers might be very interest to some people. There's a lot in here. You can explore it. When it comes to like the species at risk and stuff like that and sensitive information, it's not included in here. This is basically ministry governmental provincial data. That's all in here and public accessible data only. And so just, I know we're already at our 15 going on 16 minutes, so I'm not going to take you to these links, but there are links to some of the tools that we're working on. And one is a virtual tour, we call it. It's like our story. So we have some places where Dean is telling us, that's Chief Dean Sayers, sorry, of Batchewana, who is sharing his story of some of the happenings along St. Mary's River back in the 1850s, sorry. And then we have another tool that we're working on, and it's to collect the Anishinaabe-Moan place names. And this tool is running through our GIS online and through using a survey 123. And then again, I would click on it, but maybe right at the end, I'll go and show it really quick once I get out of this presentation. And just to collect all of our language for the lands and the waters throughout the Robertson-Huron Treaty area and beyond. And so that's it. So miigwech, thank you for your time. We appreciate that. If I can do a quick unshare, if it's going to take too long, then I won't, but I have it ready on my screen. So. Share screen, screen one. Okay, so Cheryl, can you see our survey here? So we can link, there's a link that's provided in our presentation, and it's just, I'll just show you the platform really quick. It has some information as to why we're collecting this information. It has the map here so that you can go in and locate your point. You just have to click and zoom into that, and then asking the place names and the description of the place name. So that's one of our tools. And then we have the Bawading Our Story virtual tour that we're working on. Again, Jenny Lee is working really hard on this, and it's still in the works, so it's kind of temporary. But you can see she has a map here already. We have historic sites. We have the our story, the tour sites that we took when we were with the chief, and then he wanted to represent the churches because they were long-standing churches that were in that area at that time. I'm not going to zoom in, but there's some points here. You can quickly click on a point, and again, you'll see that information comes up with that. We also have videos and the transcript to the videos that go with those points. So yeah, just a quick wanting to share that with you. So again, thank you so much for having us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, miigwech, everyone. If you have any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll be back for questions, I believe, with Alana. So thanks, Alana.
Yeah, Team Miigwech, Nikki and Cheryl, great presentation, and you guys do incredible work. So it's always a pleasure to hear from you and to hear updates. So this was great. Yeah, so actually we are going to head straight into the question period right now. We have been getting a few. So one of the ones actually, just given that you guys just presented on this, somebody was just asking how they would be able to access some of this information. So I don't know if you are able to touch on that as well, to possibly put into the chat. The link to your website would be great, so that everybody can see that. But yeah, I'll just hand it over to you if you don't mind touching on that.
For sure, I'll throw that one to Nikki.
Sorry, I was quickly trying to add it to the website, or the chat group to the website. But yes, our tool, the GIS portal that we're working on, that Jenny Lee shared that video, that is accessible right in the our website for the RHW. The other tools, I know that we're still working on getting the survey embedded, and it's not quite there. And the virtual tour, because it's not quite complete, we haven't embedded it into our website yet. But I do believe that we can share it to this chat group, and I'll just check with Cheryl after our thing, but I'll send those both in a link as well as our website.
Perfect. Yeah, that's good, Nikki.
Okay.
Wonderful. So at this time as well, I would invite the other panelists to turn their cameras on, get to see your wonderful faces if you're able, just as we kind of answer some of these questions. So again, as we're kind of going through some of these, you're still welcome to put into the Q&A any questions that you have for presenters. Somebody just mentioned they wanted to read more of what Cheryl presented. I think we could all listen to Cheryl talk all day. It's just a wonderful job. So yeah, I'll wait for Nikki to pop in the chat there, the link to your website. Yeah, so one of the other questions that we got that I'm going to probably answer myself along with Steve is, in addition to rescuing turtle nests, are you installing predator exclusion fencing as well? So Steve, if you're there, maybe if you don't mind answering that first for Shawanaga.
Sure. So we haven't had any predator exclusion fencing yet, other than just nest caging. So depending on the location, we can sort of either leave the nest, place a nest cage, or actually dig up the nest and then incubate those eggs. So depending on where it is. So like if it's a construction site where that ground is going to get dug up, we're going to want to incubate those eggs. So we'll actually dig them up, put them in an incubator, and then release them to the closest wetland. And then if it's somewhere else, it's easy to just sort of place a nest cage on it, making sure that it's has a hole that the hatchlings can get out, and they're directed away from the roadway if it's near a roadway. But we haven't yet done any fencing, but that is something that we're hoping to, in that plan I was talking about with the highway. The road will be going through the new road, a spot where, for example, Massasaugas are crossing. So we're wanting to make sure that we are able to have a budget for the fencing and know where to sort of locate or place those underpasses or eco passes so that the snakes can still get across the road once that fencing is in place.
Yeah, and to just touch on what we're doing at Magnetawan, very similar situation. We're excavating turtle nests that are at risk of being dug up or damaged, so along roadways, recreational trails, that kind of thing. We're also helping salvage some of the eggs that have been accidentally dug up on certain locations. So, and in combination, last year we did install some turtle nest protectors as opposed to doing the direct excavation. And that went really well as well. So we kind of use different approaches depending on the situation and where the nest is located in high risk areas. So next question is actually I have for Emily. What has been your favorite part of learning from Amber, and what are you looking forward to the most? So I invite you to, if you can, turn on your camera and unmute yourself. Oh, we might have to come back to her. Okay, so gonna ask another question. In the Q&A, we got a question about, will the use and occupancy information layers also be accessible? What is an appropriate process for seeking permission to show and speak to that information? And I believe that question was for Cheryl and Nikki. So if you don't mind answering that live.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we'll be working with our communities to give them that information. It'll belong to the communities. So it'll be up to the communities to figure out how they want to share that. I know that in our GIS program, and I'll probably let Nikki speak a little bit more about this, that we're working on developing private portals to kind of store some of that sensitive information that we don't necessarily want out in the world, right? So while we do know it's important and we need to, log it and have it saved in a certain way, we're not just putting that information out to the public, but the communities will have access to it and be able to use it to support informed decision making on community lands and treaty lands. So Nikki, did you want to add anything else to that?
I'm pretty sure you covered it right there. So just what the community wants, and I would assist if they wanted to have something like we shared that portal with you, that video, we can have something built like that for individual communities or something they might want to share throughout the whole treaty. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, I don't think, really, right, Cheryl? Once
yeah, and that's a perfect question, because even for Sagamok, right, since Sagamok's done their project about 3 or 5 years ago now, we've had to go through a process to ask to share some of their maps. So you see the maps that we have in the magazine. We first of all, we went to the chief and council to see if they'd be willing to share this, and then we approached those individual land users to see if they were open to sharing their own map biography. And we really starting to work with a relationship with Sagamok to showcase the work that they've done to really build that culture of research and excitement for this mapping project. So everybody who participates is going to get a map biography of their own, of where they all go hunting, fishing, trapping, all that sort of stuff. And then it's going to be contributing to our great big database. So yeah, great questions, and for sure up to the communities, and definitely going to take the appropriate protocols to protect it. And also because we're also in a court case, so we have those legal eyes on us as well. So they're always there to support us and to make sure that, we are doing our work in a good way. So miigwech for the question.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Cheryl. So we just got another question that I will likely pass off to Nadine and Steve. I believe this was directed to Steve. So during forestry operations, there are restrictions on operating, including road work during the nesting season. Was consideration given to not having road construction activities for this project during these times? So I know that, speaking on behalf of Magnetawan and what we do, oftentimes there is when road construction is needed to be done. And unfortunately, they do have to start quite early. So one of the ways that we're mitigating that is by performing nesting surveys as early as we can in seasons. We're also conducting more kind of, or we have people present on construction sites for work being done on Magnetawan, not necessarily across the Parry Sound District. Our team isn't that big. And we're also helping to develop some best management practices for road work and road construction in the area. So that's what we're doing on our part. So Steve, I don't know if you can speak specifically to the forestry operations or how any consideration is being given during some of your projects as well.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I don't know if I can speak on behalf of the forestry operations, but I do know, like, within our own work or some of the partnered work that we're doing, we're definitely creating sort of, a best management practice way of doing things. So always trying to, and this is sort of to benefit both the ones monitoring it. So like our Species at Risk project, but then also the ones doing the work. So whatever it be, the forestry company or the construction crew, if we're able to time it at a different time of year, it just sort of helps out everyone where the species are then not getting affected, but the work is still being done. And they're not sort of coming into as many sort of roadblocks, I guess you could say, where if a species at risk were to come onto the construction site, they might have to stop all work entirely. If we're able to shift that window, so they're doing their work at a different time of year, it just sort of is a win-win for everyone. So we're trying to do that in different situations. A project of ours that we're collaboration on with the Biosphere on Scaryborough Road is a really good example. And I believe we have a presentation tomorrow on that. But just quickly on that, I won't get into it too much because we'll be talking about it tomorrow. But we were able to sort of shift the replacing of culverts on that road. We were able to monitor the nesting earlier and then have the culverts replaced later on in the summer after the nesting season. So, and then with the help of monitoring and digging up some of those nests, or most of the nests, I guess you could say, we were, so it almost had like zero impact on the turtles that were there.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess if I could speak on that too, educating our construction companies that are coming on the land to do the work so that they know what we expect and what's expected of them, that nothing is done last minute. We have a plan and we're following proper timelines. And I think that helps build relationships and keeps everybody happy. But yeah, definitely the monitoring of the site pre-construction helps mitigate the impact that you're having on the species there.
Yeah. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Zhiishiigwe, Steve and Nadine for answering that. We are going to take a very short 5-minute break. So go and refill your coffee cups and do what you got to do. After this short break, we're going to be hearing from Theodore, who is going to be presenting on where we started and where we are now. So let's say at 10:50, we will come back and hear from Theodore. I'm also going to put in the chat the link to our live stream on YouTube. So if you know anybody that is having problems connecting to Zoom or would like to share the live stream, I'll put that in the chat now. And as you can see, presenters are sharing information in the chat to help answer some of your questions. So please just keep an eye on the chat, but again, continue to use the Q&A for your questions and we'll do our best to answer those. So yeah, so we'll just take 5 minutes and we'll see everybody at 10:50. Miigwech. Okay, so hopefully everybody was able to have a quick snack and grab a drink, refill their coffee. We're gonna be coming back now, so I'll just give a few more seconds here and introduce our next speaker. So we are privileged to have Theodore joining us today. He's an incredible speaker and it's been really, really great to get to know him and work with him. So without further ado, Theodore, the floor or screen is yours. So if you're there, I'll just ask to unmute yourself and you can share your screen. Unless he's also still on a break, you might have to wait a minute here. There you are.
Awesome.
Great. So yeah, whenever you're ready, you can share your screen and miigwech for being here.
Hey, no problem. All right. My name's Theodore Floma, and I work for the Wikwemikong Lands Department here in Wikwemikong, and I am the Species at Risk Coordinator for the band. I believe I've been here since 2007, and it's been a great journey, to say the least. But and I've enjoyed every minute of it. I've been here. I've walked a lot of miles in regards to gathering information. Without the help of the elders and our working group, I don't think this program wouldn't be where it is today. I grew up off the land, and I'm a fluent speaker. I speak the language more than I do the English language, so pardon me if I mumble my way through sometimes. With that, I'll get started. Awesome. John. Stuck in there.
Sure. Oh, okay. Yeah, click on it.
That's it. This thing?
Yeah. Or right click on here. Should say start slideshow.
If you can see the slideshow tab
Almost
on the top of your screen, if you click that, it's to the right of where it says animations. That's one option.
Yeah, it's covered right now.
Okay, can you see at the bottom of your screen, do you see bottom right corner, just a little, go a little bit to your right, a couple more icons, one more, that one right there. Nope, yep, there we go.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Awesome, thank you. All right, like I said, it's a privilege to be here, and thank you for the invite. And I'll get started on my presentation. Kind of time frame do I have?
You have until 11:45.
11:45. Cool. I don't know if I have that many words in me. Anyway, like I said, I guess first thing is for this department is to turn. We've been trying to turn the our Wikwemikong Lands Department back into the language, and in this frame it says Wikwemikong Eke Mino Enodek Zimagak Genenik, which means Wikwemikong Lands Department. How we got started. Wikwemikong, in 2007, they were intending on doing a land use plan, and they had no data on what was on the land. So the manager at that time outsourced for some funding for the SARS program. And I believe that year, it's the year that was the first year, sorry. So Wikwemikong Eke Nenizanak Wingushkok. That's a species at risk program in the language. And this is the first one, the Waldorf virus that we were in search of. We mapped out the whole area where it was on the south side of Wikwemikong, and since then I think it's been downgraded to a special concern. And on our travels, we came across this. The vision statement for this department is that we conserve the land, water, and the environment and promote sustainability for our children and their children. Presently, I think Wikwemekong has 26 species that are on the list that are listed, and this spring we're going to try to look for the chorus frog. And some of the species we have, I don't think they're all on this frames. The ever popular Blandings turtle. And we have another reserve on the eastern shoreline of Pass Killarney. And this is where the Mississauga rattlesnake resides. There have been reports here on the mainland of Wikwemekong, but there's yet to be, there has to be yet concern that it is actually here. Milk snake. We used to have an abundance of these, and there's been very few sightings lately. So I guess we're still looking for it. The ribbon snake, special concern is found on the, again, on the northern side of the reserve because of the massive wet areas we have there and along the shorelines of Point Rundine. Snapping turtles. Years ago, we used to have an abundance of these whippoorwills. I don't know if this will work. No. This one. Nothing didn't work. Okay, so yeah, so they used to be everywhere here on the reserve, but ever since I guess be the 1980s, starting in the 1980s, they have been on a decline. But we do have them in Point Rundine, as well as here. We may have about maybe 14 mating pairs. Common nighthawks. We have an abundance of them here. I think we've counted maybe 20 pairs. And the red-headed woodpecker. And of course, bald-headed eagle. In our language, it's called the megaza, but I've been told that it is called, you take out the M and it's only giza. So there's actually two sayings on how to name it in the language. People are always saying that they spotted a golden eagle, but to try and convince them that it's immature, it's really not worth trying to tell them that it isn't. It's immature. That one. We have meadowlarks, bobolink, Canada warblers, and golden wing warblers. barn swallows, and peewees. So, Houghton's goldenrod is it's only found in small areas here on the reserve, mostly on the southern side of the reserve, and it grows among the common goldenrod. Gathering Zhiishiigwe is found sometimes, I guess it'd be towards the end of August, early part of September on the northern side of the reserve. The population here for this is not the greatest, and it depends on the year, on the weather. I guess it thrives on. I think if it's too dry, it'll not come up. If it's an average year, and then you'll probably find it. Maybe in the area we have it, I think there's maybe about 200 plants. Oops. As you would notice, the common one doesn't have. The Zhiishiigwe has a stem between the flower and the main plant itself, as versus the common one, which doesn't have that stem between the stem itself and the flower. As you'll notice, the stems. One other one we have here on the reserve is behind our, right by our reservoir, is the ram's head orchid. It flowers around June, towards the end of May, early part of June. Practically have to crawl on your hands and knees to find it. It grows in the marshy area. Blazing stars, we do have them on the north side as well as some on the south side, and I guess it's one of those plants that is highly looked for by our medicinal people. It has great medicinal values. Anyway, to get to, well, that's only part of what we have. Anyway, so we took all this information, we compiled it, and we made a list and put it on a hard copy. And I meet with our elders maybe once a month, twice a month, and we took all this info to them in 2010, I would be assuming, and they looked it over. And they said that, well, you know, you guys are doing some good stuff up there at the land office. Anyway, so we met, and they said, well, you know, also that our medicinal plants are also in danger of being gone forever. Can you do something about it? So anyway, we sat and talked about it, what we could do. And then they came up with a book. They said, why don't we put a book together and we'll help you. I really didn't have any, it wasn't my book to say, because it was them that put the book together, and they deserve all this credit. I'm just I guess I'm just a driver or whatever I am. Anyway, so this book, we worked on it for about a year, and then they didn't want this, they didn't want that, made all kinds of changes on it. So finally they came up with this book. We got funded for it, and I think to date we may have given 800 books away to different people from all over Ontario, right into Michigan. And it has the name of the plant as in the language, and this short description where you can find it. The only thing we couldn't do is advertise what it was used for. In those meetings, they also said, what about our walrus? Can you do something about it? And to my surprise, I didn't even know we had walrus on the land. And they said, well, the stories began, where they found it, where it was, and how long ago, last time it was picked, and to see if it was, and they wanted us to go see if it was still there. So the Rhodology journey started for this. So with some of us, the Lands Department, they funded us to take some training out in Waters, Michigan. And I believe we were gone for about 4 or 5 days to learn how to pick it, process it, and whatnot. So in 2014, we had our first harvesting processing workshop in Killarney, using our own product from our walrus beds. These are 2 women harvesting the walrus. I believe they're making knocking sticks. And these are our graduates. So, medicinal plants. Like I said, they're getting harder and harder to find here on the reserve, and we've been diligently working to protect it, along with the SARS, and we came up trying to transplant this stuff. One of the things we learned over the years is that it is put here on the land for us to use, and we should not sell it. Each year we take our elders to do their medicinal pick. And there are some of the individuals that we have taken up. This golden eagle is, we got it along the shoreline. Somebody reported it to us that there was an eagle on the shoreline, and it was there for about 3 days. So anyway, we went there and captured it and put it in a cage and shipped it to the Lively Center. I forget what it was called. I think it was Hope for Wildlife or something like that. It stayed there for about 3 months, and it came back to us after that 3 month, that period of time. And we released it along the shoreline here with a ceremony from our traditional people. Anyway, so I used to hang out with a medicine man here, and he asked me one day. He says, "Can you look when you're out on the land all the time?" He says, "Can you find me um, a plant that's in the water?" That's what he says, and he says it has a yellow flower. I don't want the one with the white flower. So anyway, I tried to look for that for all summer that summer, and it wasn't. I guess I wasn't meant to find it. And then he passed on that fall, and so I was never able to learn what it was used for. So the following year, I was wandering around in the Clarny area, and I came across the plant, and there it was. It was too late though. Some of the stuff that is getting harder and harder to find. You get to see it all over the place. Is red oyster. Again, it is most sought after by the medicinal people here. Showy lady slipper. I believe it comes out in late August or early September. And again, it's one of those plants that is getting harder and harder to find. It has great medicinal value, and it's like I said, it's really not the easiest thing to find. I think this will work. So we're trying to get our kids involved in the SARS program as well as the medicinal end of things. We're trying to get them to come into the office and before the pandemic, and then they name the plant. They first they tell us who they are, and then we try and get them to name the plant in the language, which is even the elders. If there's an elder that comes into the office, we show him the slides, and then we asked him, "Do you wanna try and name the plant? We'll record you." Some of them say yes, some of them say no. Again, most of the stuff, like all the SARS stuff and all the plants that I have shown, all those plants, they're most of them are the name of the plant and the language is kept here in the office. So the name of the plant is Mepin in the language, and in the English language it's wild ginger. Bone set in the language it's called Shabok Sing. In other words, it means that the stem comes through the leaf. Let's see, will it work? Oh yeah. In the language, Meshkos means sturgeon. Apparently, when the sturgeon was not feeling well or whatever, it would crawl up on the land and come and look for this stuff. And that was its medicine. Common plantain, Pashkadagan is you could find this everywhere. It's a pain medicine. Ishkana, Ifskanet Nungos, blazing star. Like I said before, it's most sought after here on the reserve with the medicinal people, and it's used in smudge as well as other purposes. Naudoionic lousewort is it's one of those plants that it's getting harder and harder to find, and apparently through the stories to the medicinal people I've heard, it's been used to break fever. It's a cold remedy. One of the farmers actually said that they used to give it to horses before race day. It's like a pick-me-upper. Even burdock plays a role in our everyday lives here. Some people call it a weed, but we as a people here in Wikwemikong, we look at it differently. It is it's like a Band-Aid. Wall raisin. We don't actually have it here on the reserve. If we do need it, we can find it along the rivers along Point Grundine, east of Killarney. Golden thread. It's a woman's medicine, and it can only be picked when it is required. It does not do well when it's dry. Hence the name golden thread, because of the golden color of the roots. Fairly everlasting. Most people use it as a smudge. The old harvesters, like all the hunters that have walked before us, they use this to smudge their guns when they're going out on a hunt. Wheat civet, winter green. So I have diabetes, and one time the elders, when I was meeting with them, I says sometimes my sugar will, if I'm all about on the land, sometimes my sugar will drop. And they said, why don't you pick some wheat civet? Again, when you talk to the elders here, everything's in the language. So you have to remember what they said about the name of the plant, and you try and figure out what it is in the English language. That's the issue. I guess it's not an issue. It's a privilege, I guess, that I do the research on it. Anyway, getting back to that, I do have diabetes, and many a time this will get me out of the bush if my sugar decides to drop. mind you, you only eat a couple leaves, 2 or 3 at most, because if you take a handful like maybe up to 10 leaves or even past 10 leaves, that'll just upset your stomach like crazy. Again, this is the other plant. It's I would not suggest for anybody to take this without consulting somebody that knows about this plant. Because I know I've tried it, and it was not a good feeling, because sometimes, even again, like if I'm out on the land, my sugar will climb, and it's not that that I wanted to climb. But anyway, so I discussed this with an elder one time, and he showed me the route, and he says, this is called Wopshkiji. So I remember the name. I asked him, where can I find it? He says, no, you find it yourself. You're on this road, so you gotta look for it yourself. Anyway, so I researched it, asked around, nobody seems to know. I came across the picture, and I think this is it. Then I went over and I went back and showed him, this is the plant. Yes, this is it, he says, and it's called the ball gentian. And it flowers around September, I believe, towards the end of September. Like I said before, if it drops your sugar. It's like I said, if you want to use it, it's better to consult somebody that has used it, because it could, if you take too much of it, it'll drop your sugar to very low levels. Because I tried it, and I took too much of it, and it dropped my sugar to about 2, a little bit over 2 in about an hour. Again, one of those, it's chaga. In our language, it's called skitagan. It's being overpicked, and it's lining dollars in people's pockets, which shouldn't happen. In all those medicines that I've been taught, once the elders said that once dollars change for that medicine, it takes away the power of that medicine a bit, they was told. So I have, anytime that somebody requires medicine from me, I usually just give it away and take a small gift. Even that guy in the background, big pine that's been hit by lightning, that has great medicinal value, as well as the cones on it. They say, the elder said that if you have bad dreams for in a period of time, he said, go find yourself a tree that was hit by lightning, and pick up the splinters, ask that tree what you want it to do for you, and put it under your pillow, and you sleep with those splinters for a couple nights, 3 nights would be good. And then once you're done, you take that splinter back to that tree where you found it and give thanks to that tree for that gift he provided to you. This stuff is also of medicinal value. I have a lot of this growing in front of my yard, and I have a couple of individuals that come around and pick it once in a while. Traditional ecologic TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, has been the foundation for sharing information since the start of the project, 2007. A relationship has been formed with other communities along the North Shore as well as in the United States. I've been talking about the SARS program from here to Michigan, and last year I ended up in Wisconsin. So for the sharing the elders do, we invite them for a fish and chip outing every year in the fall, and they extremely like that. Community outreach, we do a lot of that. Before the pandemic, we used to go into the schools and talk about our SARS, our SARS project, as well as the missile end of things, and that was the direction we got from our elders here, that we do this to teach our young about our plants and everything that's on the land. We're trying. They basically said, get those kids out of the classrooms. They call them boxes. Get those kids out of the boxes and back onto the land to learn about what we have on the land and to teach them on what these plants were for. These people were, I forget what it was called, something community anyway. They were visitors from Africa, and we were going on an outing. So I went down to the elder center that morning to pick up the elders. So anyway, these people were also there, these people from Africa, and they inquired if they could join us on our walkabout, and they said, in the end, they provided us with some what their take was on the outing, and I was surprised that they too have the same kind of plants and they use them as the same as we do here as Indigenous people. Again, it was one of our outings with the students to teach them about SARS as well as other things. And I also made it to the language conference a couple times in Sault Ste. Marie. Our twins, rattlesnakes, capture and release, just photograph the head and try and match it up if we ever recapture the animal again and see if we weigh it, take the length. So we have all that info in office. A new species, we're trying to find information about it. Osprey, he was caught in what do you call those things, on the net at one of the fish farms. So we went over, picked it up, made sure that it was okay, shipped it to Lively. They kept it for about 2 weeks. brought it back. We tried to relocate it on the south side of the reserve, but it made its way back to Magnetawan Bay. So what's next? Well, by the way, we did this for our elders. We got some funding, and then we built them this greenhouse. So after it's all said and done, it's we developed best protection plans for each species. We call the thing Minjajagadek Edogumguk, which means helping what is here. And that document is ready, and since we're supposed to take it to the chief and council last year, the pandemic came along and we were not able to do so. So I hope things clear up or get better this year so we can bring them. We have in that book, I think we have something like 20 species that we suggested what we could do to help it along. The document contains preferred habitat, where it's found on the reserve, its threat level, recommended action for protection, suggestions for Wikwemikong territory habitat. They have this document over at the Elder Center too, so they wanted it for their own information. So basically, this is what we're doing right now, working with the community elders, interested individuals, youth, in developing this document, which we are presently doing. And continuing with the elders with the greenhouse project. And one of the things that they advised the elders was to showcase our species at risk areas and ecological sensitive areas. I guess I'll get into that towards the end of this presentation. And one of them is here. This is one of our elvars. It contains Gadringer zagalinus as well as the blazing star. Starter working group was one of the recommendations we got from the elders, and we do have a working group. We call it the Shkokamekwe Genenmagic, Keepers of Mother Earth. Those are them there. Well, some of them. All in all, I think we have 14 members. You might notice the guy in the middle, Anthony from Cape Croker. Again, these are, we walked through that, we call it the marsh part. So we needed ideas on how to set it up. So these individuals came along and I guess they said, put this here, put that there, work it this way, sort of thing. We designed our logo. This is the Lands logo. So along with it, when we work on the project, we use this logo. It's the Shkokamekwe logo. The eagle represents the sky. The fish in the middle represents the water. The moose represents the land, and that white stuff that's on the outside, it's supposed to be green, but it's supposed to be a sweetgrass breed to represent the plants. Eco Trail. I guess this is where we're at right now, a trail system that is designed exclusively for the enjoyment of guests as well as to learn. It has very minimal impact on the biodiversity of the land. And provides the traditional knowledge to experience the ways it was. Our Mississauga Rattlesnake sign, just to make the paddlers aware that there might be rattlesnakes and they're their camping areas along the shore of Point Rundine, goes as far as the French River. One of the projects that we're very happy with is the Prairie Point Elver. That elver is home to rare plants that only grow here at this site on the entire Wikwemacong land base. Gallinger's Agolinus is one of them. We fenced off this area to keep the ATVs or motorcycles or whatever would be able to drive on the Elver. We did a small video for the community in regards to it, and just to tell the story behind it, why it's there and why we're protecting it. It's if there's an impact on it, I don't think it'll may not recover at all. We use it as an educational site. We bring our school kids there, and we show them around, see what's there, see why it's important, because of the SARS end of it, and they truly enjoy it because we've gotten some good responses from our school age kids. We have these signs posted along the Elver. Again, we were just telling the community that we are only here and we do not own anything on her. The staff here call these things church pedestals. And in the background, even that's a power ground in the back, and they work with us on this project, which is great to see. This is the project that we are working on right now. We call it the Marsh Project, or the Mishkadeong Shkusse project. Again, we're trying to keep everything in the language, and in the end, I think it's a walking trail. In it, we'll have all the information on SARS that we have, pictures and whatnot, and in the background at that point here, we'll have a deck, a 20 by 20 deck, and on the side we'll have a teaching lodge. This is the sign at the entrance. The big one on the right, it shows all the species at risk we have here on the reserve. And in the lower left-hand corner, we have the birds that we have here in the winter. We weren't going to open this until it was ready, but we decided over the winter to see what the community thought about it. and it was actively busy all winter. Like it was at no time there was always somebody there. In the end, I think we measured it to be, once it's done, I think from start to end, I think they said it's going to be 5.5 kilometers long. This is where the teaching area is going. The guys in the background, they're putting the foundation, the footings in where the viewing deck will be. And again, we're going to have these pedestals all along, as directed by our community elders. That when we bring the kids out, that they'll see and feel the tree. The cedars are roughly around 150 years old. So on the information, once you open that little door, it'll have the name of the tree, what's its name in the language, just basic information about it, and in the background it'll have what we use it for, medicinally or traditionally. The boys, even we're going to try and inspire to ospreys to come back to the land. This area was known to have ospreys at one time, so we're going to try and invite them back with this structure. What changes have we seen that have occurred over the years? I've walked this earth for a very long time, and I've seen a lot of changes. On the water, what's in the water, on the land, or even what's going on with our gardens. Will all things be affected with climate change? We put this out to the community, and the basic answer we got was, it is believed that the Indigenous people will be more directly affected by this. Snowfall. Some winters, the winters has changed. Like this year, in the bay here, the ice was not solid at all. It kept going in and out. Bird migration. Water levels affecting growth in the uplands. These are some of the responses we got from the community members here. One of the things that we're trying to do is that the group had was that that the grandmothers, they start these plants, be it SARS or our medicinal plants. They keep them in their backyards, and until in this format, until they're ready to bring out. So the grandmothers, they're the keepers of the plant. So they bring them back to where they think they will survive, and just for them to flourish back. We tried planting. Anthony from Cape Croker said, "Why don't you guys come down and pick some of your medicines and try and transplant them?" back in your community. So we did the journey there. I think it was June or May of last year. But we did something wrong, and most of our plants did not take. So we're gonna have to rethink things out and see if we can do it another way. One of the things, like I said, what the elders suggested that we bring these kids out and teach them about the SARS as well as other things. In this photo, I teamed up with the health center to do this day workshop with the kids, and they showed them how to make scone. That day we called it reconnecting our youth to the land. Pretty much everything was hands-on for them. They here, I think they're putting a smoker together on how it used to be done. Here they are smoking fish. So we had a species at risk camp, a field day camp, and we called it Mikosuk, Little Beaver Day. It was August 8 and 9. Sorry about that. It was 2 years ago now, which was a tremendous success. I think they wanted another one, but again, the pandemic got in the way. Their activities, wild rice bed. Again, an elder I worked with said, you have to put that in there. You got to remind people that water is sacred. And there is 4 sacred types of water: birth, rain, sap water, and the water that comes off the leaves, which is very important. You don't realize how important that is, that water that comes off the leaves. Water has spirit. Even water is a species at risk. So in closing, these guys are on a mission, but I don't think they'll be getting very far. Always moving forward, either by land or water. Another indicator that time is changing is even beavers have satellite dishes nowadays. With that, miigwech.
Miigwech, Theodore. As always, it's a pleasure hearing you speak, and obviously what you've done for your community and the land is inspirational. So chi miigwech for being here and for sharing. We do have a few questions for you just before you go, if that's all right. A lot of people were interested in the book that you had mentioned, which I know we spoke about before. It's a hot topic, but I don't know if you can just touch on, a lot of people were wondering if it was for sale, how you were able to make it. So I don't mind if you, could you just touch on that?
Okay, the book was derived from our elders. It was their suggestion that we produce something like that for whoever that needed info. I think at that time they said, since we know some of the language and as well as the plants, they said that to help any other First Nations or individual communities in regards to their plants. And that's how that book derived. That's why we've produced about 800 copies of them, and even I don't even have one. That's how hard it is.
Yeah, well, it's really nice that you were able to make that for your community and to be able to share. So yeah, miigwech. We have another question here. For the bottle gentian, what part of the plant would you take?
Um,
Or if you'd
I
like
don't
to
know
share,
if
or is that a secret?
I should. I kind of promised the elder that I would not divulge.
That's totally, hey, that's fine. I totally
it's one of those
understand.
plants that lets me say it's too dangerous. I don't
Understand. Yeah, and obviously anytime that that requires that kind of expertise, it's always good to be there with the person so that they can teach you properly.
If that individual if that individual texts me, I probably could tell him.
Sounds good. We'll put your information, we'll put your email in the chat if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. I hope I didn't bore you.
Never, Theodore, you could never bore us. We're getting lots of thank yous and Zhiishiigwe in the chat. So I don't know if you can see that, but everyone is very grateful to have had you here and to hear you speak. So I don't know if you're seeing all of that, but lots of thank yous, Zhiishiigwe. Okay, so we just have one last question here, and I apologize, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong. When is Wiccan ready for harvest?
It usually, some people, there's a lot of people that pick it before it's ripe. Like usually, the teaching I got was to wait until the first frost. The story is that whatever's up in the plant, after the first frost, the whatever, the stronger medicine in it goes back into the root. So it'd be after your first frost.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much.
And there's a lookalike for that plant. I would suggest that you don't pick that one.
Yeah, so it's another thing. Obviously, be sure before you pick anything.
Yeah, really, because it causes an awfully sore throat.
Oh, yeah, not good. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Zhiishiigwe. We're going to be heading to lunch shortly. But before we do that, we do have a presentation on our door prizes. So as I said before, we do have some door prizes to offer. And the way that you can win these is we'll be releasing a short, quick survey tomorrow that you guys can fill out, and the winners will be randomly chosen on day 3. So I'm going to throw it over to Nadine, who is going to share some of the wonderful prizes that are included in these packages. So Nadine, take it away.
Yes, one sec. I'm just getting set up here. One sec. I share my screen. There we go. Okay. And can you see that? Perfect.
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay. So usually we would have had small gifts, usually plants at our conference. So this year for our first virtual conference, we've opted to have 3 larger door prizes. And we wanted to support small, local, Indigenous and sustainable businesses. So like Alana said, by completing the survey on day 2, that's tomorrow, you can enter to win one of these 3 prize bags. So this presentation highlights all the businesses whose work can be found in each bag. So we were fortunate to have a lot of talent right in our local First Nation. So we have 4 artists. The first is Kimberly Charles. So she provided some beaded earrings and quill earrings. Tanya Naganosh, she has some dream catchers and small car ornaments of little moccasins. Janice Smith, she's provided blank slate talking sticks so that each person can personalize their own and connect with their talking stick. They're made from jack pine trees. And Autumn Smith's artwork was printed on the tote bags, socks, and masks for each of the prizes. We've had some other local artists provide their prints. Here's an Anishinaabe artist from Saugeen First Nation. All right. And Morning Star Designs. I've also included all their Instagram handles on each of the pages. We have a subscription to Raven Reads Books. This is a proudly Indigenous and women-owned company. Each package has a biannual subscription included. They have a youth and an adult version. The Wooden Window, this small sustainable repurposed business, and shout out to the artist Alana, who is also here. And a bunch of local shops in Parry Sound. We have gift cards, Trestle Brewing Company, Muddy Handshake Pottery, Tri Sports, and Ogima Cafe. We had from the Wolf Den, Roy Thomas, an Anishinaabe artist with nickel-free belt buckles, and the two different designs, the turtle and the Thunderbird. Bonnie's Homemade, Canadian woman-owned company, crafted with love. Pillowcases for some fun spice in your bed. Little Pine Pets, they have some beautiful handcrafted sustainable cork collars. And no, my dog is not part of the prize pack. Algonquin Tea Company, some ethically harvested teas. And the Glass Sipper to reduce our single-use plastic, some reusable drinking straws with fun little critters on them. So once again, all these prizes, there's 3 different bags, and you can enter to win them after completing the survey on Wednesday.
Yes, so Nadine, I'm also gonna ask that we loop this over the lunch break so that people can check out all of the Instagram handles and see what's in each prize pack, so that they can enter to win which one they'd like. So without further ado, we are gonna take a short break for lunch. We're gonna take 45 minutes. And yeah, so during this time, recharge, fill your bellies. And afterwards, we are going to have the privilege to hear from Dr. Jessie Pop, who is our keynote today. And she is going to be speaking about braiding Indigenous and Western knowledge systems in environmental research in a good way. So we thank you very much for everyone who has stayed with us. And we look forward to continuing to see you guys after lunch. But without further ado, yeah, we'll see you guys in a little while. Miigwech. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're just gonna take a few more moments here just to let people log back on. I hope everyone had a great lunch. Just to follow up about the door prizes as well. So again, for anybody who participated today or tomorrow, one or the other or both, everybody who is registered will receive the link to the survey. So if you are unable to attend tomorrow, no worries there. You will still get the survey that contains the door prizes. So no worries there. And again, emphasizing as well, we are live streaming this to YouTube. So you can share that to anybody who wasn't able to register. Yeah, so we are very much looking forward to our keynote today. Dr. Jessie Pop is a close partner, long-term partner of Magnetawan First Nation, and we're very privileged to work with her and to have her here today as well. So as I said, she is going to be presenting on braiding Indigenous and Western knowledge systems in environmental research in a good way. Jessie, if you don't mind, we'll get you set up now, and you can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Ani, everyone, hello. It's such a pleasure to be here today. I'm so excited and honored to be part of this conference. This is my absolute favorite conference, so it's so wonderful that it's been able to happen today, despite some of the restrictions that we're under. So can I share my screen? It says host disabled screen sharing.
Try again. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Can you see that? Okay,
Perfect.
so I'll start with saying ani, Jesse Indigenous Wikwim Kong Donjaba, Makwa Dodam, Anishinaabe Kwe, Ndao Miigwech. Hi everyone, my name is Jessie Pop. I'm a member of Wikwim Unceded Territory, and I'm a chair in Indigenous Environmental Science at the University of Guelph. Although I don't reside in Guelph, I'm living in the Robinson Huron Treaty area in the traditional territory of Atikmikshing and Anishinaabe, which is where I'm beaming in from today. And I was invited to share with you a little bit about my journey in braiding Indigenous and Western knowledge systems in environmental research in a good way, as well as some of the work that we've been engaging with the communities in the region. So I'm really happy to share this with you today. Just trying to switch up. Just trying to change my slide here. It's taking a second, I think. Oh, there we go. So for those of you who don't know me, I'll just share a little bit more of some background information about myself. I mentioned I'm a member of Wikwim Unceded Territory, but I didn't grow up in community. I grew up in Northern Ontario in the Sudbury region. I'm Anishinaabe on my mother's side and mixed heritage on my father's side, so sort of have a foot in two cultural worlds. And I'm a wildlife ecologist. For the most part, I've worked with large mammals, so species like caribou, which you can see in the background here. I've also worked with moose, bear, wolves, elk, but more and more my work is becoming taking more of a holistic approach, as we know all things are interconnected. So the work that I do aims to bring together, weave or braid Indigenous and Western knowledge systems, multiple ways of knowing and seeing the world to help us better understand ecology or environmental science. But this approach, seeing the science or environmental work from perspective from multiple ways of knowing, was not something that I learned about in school. I actually did a bachelor, master's, and PhD in biology, and really had, as for my undergraduate degree, really had my head in the books, like many students did, barely had time to look up. And it wasn't until I was invited to my very first conference ever, which I was so excited for, where my supervisor, brought us to the door of the conference, opened his arms, and he said, "Welcome to the Old Boys Club." That's when my head popped out of that book. It said, "Oh my goodness, this really is the Old Boys Club." So science for me at that time, for the environmental work, was really dominated by, and maybe still is today, dominated by white men. And I started wondering, like, why, where, how come I don't see a lot of Indigenous peoples in science? Why don't I hear about Indigenous ways of knowing knowledge systems and perspectives in the courses that I'm taking, in the work and the research that's happening around me? So I wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn more about why this was and how we could change that and how I could be part of that change. So I started on a journey of learning, where I started chatting with elders, chatting with knowledge holders, but also doing what I knew best through my academic training, was reading, academic books and publications. So learning more and more about the history in Canada. And as we know, the history with settlers has been not a good one, to say the least. The goals of early settlers and Canadians were to assimilate Indigenous peoples. Even the goals of Canada. So John A. Macdonald was the first prime minister and said in 1885 that the great aim of our legislation has been to do away with the tribal systems and assimilate Indian people in all respects with the other inhabitants of the Dominion as speedily as they are fit to change. So Indigenous knowledge systems and ways of knowing were thought of to be inferior to more Eurocentric or Western ways of knowing or knowledge systems. And it was based in this thinking that universities and school systems were founded in present day Canada, so being very Eurocentric based with a Western worldview. So learning more about the why things are. It's really important to learn about the history of colonization in present day Canada. As I mentioned, Indigenous peoples' knowledge systems, ways of knowing were once considered by settlers as uncivilized and inferior. And Western and Eurocentric knowledge systems or systems in general dominate today. And this is wrong. We can coexist. Everyone's worldview, knowledge system, and way of life is equally valid and important. We need to engage in reconciliation. So I highly encourage anyone to learn more. And this book is a really great start, written by Bob Joseph, an Indigenous scholar, 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act, but helping Canadians make reconciliation with Indigenous peoples a reality. And in this book, Bob Joseph talks about the Indian Act, so the Indian Act being a colonial law that has directed assimilation, and although revised throughout the years, is still used today. Bob Joseph says the Indian Act has not achieved its goal of getting rid of the Indian problem. Indigenous culture is openly celebrated by Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. The Indigenous population is the fastest growing segment of Canada. Indigenous languages are being revived and recorded. There are increasing instances of local governments recognizing original names of towns, sites, and streets. And Indigenous communities and individuals are proudly rebuilding their nations. So through my journey of learning, I've been really inspired by quotes like this, by books, by movements, and by strength exhibited by Indigenous peoples all around me. So also along my journey of learning, I came across these sort of academic terms: traditional ecological knowledges, Indigenous knowledge systems, Aboriginal traditional knowledge. So all of these terms, and thinking in terms of Anishinaabe knowledge, Giikin or knowledge of the earth. So all of these terms essentially meaning that ecological or environmental knowledge held by Indigenous people transferred down through generation. And for the most part, historically transferred down orally, although other ways were used for transferring knowledge as well. And sometimes people think of Indigenous knowledge systems or traditional ecological knowledge as being just that, environmental knowledge. But it is so much more than that. It is a way of being, a way of living, and is intrinsically tied to worldview. So Raymond Periotti says that an individual's worldview, or the way that this individual sees the world, has a major impact on the way that he or she interprets it. So worldview can differ among cultures, it can differ among nations, communities, individuals. We all see things a little bit differently. We interpret things a little bit differently, understand things a bit differently, and therefore have relationships with the environment, for example, differently. That being said, Indigenous scholars across the world, talk about some of these similarities that Indigenous peoples have in their philosophies and worldview. Leroy Littlebear, who's the founding director of Harvard University's Native American program, has said that given Canada's cultural and linguistic diversity, it is foolish to suggest that a single Native perspective exists. Yet, there are unique ways of understanding events that have demonstrated to me and others that there are culturally specific ways of appreciating what we may have previously considered to be universally accepted ideas. So there is incredible diversity among Indigenous nations in terms of worldviews and knowledge systems, but there are these sort of similarities in some philosophies and way of and relationships, for example. To expand on this a little bit, Herman Mitchell, who's a Cree author, writes that Indigenous philosophies are based on a foundation of respect for all ways of knowing. Although we have diverse knowledge systems, we are all related and we honor each other's ways. The respect we have for all our relations is based on a philosophy of coexistence and the inherent responsibilities and obligations involved in maintaining relationships. Henry Lickers, who's an environmental biologist of the Seneca Nation, further elaborates that First Nations people view themselves not as custodians, stewards, or having dominion over the earth, but as an integrated part in the family of the earth. The earth is my brother, my mother, and the animals, plants, and minerals are my brothers and sisters. So we have these common philosophies and relationships with the land, which can differ from Western ways of knowing, for example. Often thinking, at least when I was in school and learning from a Western sort of viewpoint, the humans are often pulled apart and separated from the land. Oftentimes, we thinking about humans being dominating the earth or in control of, which is different than the way Indigenous people see the world. So despite your way of seeing the world, your knowledge systems, each again being equally valuable, important ways of seeing the world, and each can through different lenses can see things a little bit differently. And these ways of seeing the world can be complementary to one another. Mi'kmaq elder Albert Marshall from Unama'ki or Cape Breton elaborates on this concept and calls it two-eyed seeing. And he says that we can better understand the world, or in the case of the work that I do, environmental research, through seeing through two eyes or two lenses. So one eye or lens through the strength of Indigenous ways of knowing knowledge systems and perspectives, and the other eye or lens through Western ways of knowing knowledge systems or perspectives. And that these different viewpoints can be complementary and can help us have a more holistic, better understanding of the world or environmental relationships. And this, of course, can be applied to multiple ways of knowing, for example, different Indigenous nations. So while in the very recent past, there didn't seem to be space for Indigenous knowledge systems in Western academic institutions, specifically for the sciences, that has started to change. People across the world are seeing the value of ensuring science is inclusive of multiple ways of knowing. We've seen this article's a few years old, but we see articles popping up like this all over. This one specifically, how Western science is catching up to Indigenous knowledge systems. So making science better. Jesse Wente, who's an Anishinaabe broadcaster, says that in thinking about inclusion and diversity, think of a forest. Is there one kind of tree? No. That tells us the natural way is diverse. It is so important to be inclusive and diverse in science. It is the natural way. And in doing so, we're making science, we're making environmental research better. So this journey of learning that I'm on and will always be on quickly became a journey of learning and sharing. I was really excited when the university, as part of Laurentian University, invited me in my PhD to develop and teach a course, the very first course that braided together Indigenous knowledge systems in biology. So I developed a course, Indigenous People, Ecology, Science, Technology, elaborating on the innovations and the science contributions Indigenous people have contributed to the world. This was offered for a few years while I was there. And it was really exciting to share about some of the technological innovations, for example, innovated by Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island and beyond. So for example, the canoe, the kayak, moccasins, the warmest clothing in existence, the parka, snowshoes. And these are just a few of the very, very many examples that exist. And of course, these technologies and innovations were quickly adapted by European settlers. And of course, not just technological innovations, but the science of many different things. So for example, the science of domestication. domestication beginning thousands of years ago in the Americas, and 3/5 of the crops now in cultivation across the world were domesticated by Indigenous people in North, Central, and South America. Many, many species, but just a few examples here, like corn, peppers, potatoes, tomatoes, but also agricultural techniques. So here just showing an image of the three sisters. So corns, beans, and squash growing together, providing a balanced diet and increased productivity through polyculture. Also showing us, teaching us many teachings of working together. The science of medicines. So many, many medicines, that we know about today came from Indigenous peoples. Just two examples here. Theodore actually was elaborating on a few as well, but here's just two examples. So the branch on the left is a pine branch coming from a conifer tree. And so historically, as settlers arrived in North America on Turtle Island, Indigenous peoples welcomed newcomers but saw symptoms of scurvy, which is actually a life-threatening disease. So as people were traveling across the sea in ships, not having the greatest diet and lacking important vitamins. So Indigenous peoples offered tonics of conifer needles, which were rich in vitamin C, which actually helped improve health of settlers. Also on the right here, we have a willow tree. So Indigenous people use the bark of the willow tree as a pain reliever in addition to many other things. And the active ingredient in that is acetylsalic acid, which is now synthesized today and you find in aspirin. So if you've ever had an aspirin, that's where it came from. So many plant properties are still to this day being recognized, especially in tropical ecosystems, as Indigenous people share their knowledge. So again, along this journey, we're sharing more. I was really excited to write an article for an academic magazine, The Conversation: How Indigenous Knowledge Advances Modern Science and Technology. And this was out a few years ago. Excited to share about some of these contributions and really trying to help change the way we think about science. And when this article came out, I had actually a few people, one including a supervisor for an employment position I was working in, say, there's no such thing as Indigenous science. We have science the way it is, and that's how it is, and it will always be that way. And that's something, myself and maybe many of you are exposed to quite frequently. But that's not true. And a shift is happening. Opposition still exists, but we are seeing Indigenous peoples rise around the world and allies across the planet joining forces, joining efforts to make science more inclusive and diverse. So as people are recognizing, the value in being inclusive of multiple ways of knowing and environmental research and science in general, it's really important to think about ensuring that this is done in a good way. So I was really excited to hear about all the great people working and doing this work all around me, but I realized that sometimes this work is not done in a good way. And I started realizing just how much we need to protect Indigenous knowledge. Mary Batiste and Henderson, so Mary Batiste being a Mi'kmaq scholar, wrote this book, Protecting Indigenous Knowledge and Heritage. And in the book, she says Indigenous knowledge has been identified as the latest great resource rush. So people all trying to, include Indigenous knowledge in aspects of their work. And she says that as Indigenous knowledge and heritage becomes more attractive commercially, the cognitive heritage that gives Indigenous peoples their identity is under assault from those who would gather it up, strip away its honored meaning, convert it to a product, and sell it. And each time that happens, the heritage and knowledge die a little, and with them, the people. They go on to say, the protection of Indigenous knowledge and heritage represents the protection and preservation of Aboriginal humanity. All people must have equal dignity and essential worth. Their languages, heritages, and knowledges must be equally respected by public institutions and by all people. So Dr. Deb McGregor, who's a Canada Research Chair in Indigenous Environmental Justice at York University, came to find some of these issues that people were identifying when, thinking about work, but not actually doing so in a good way. She attended a conference several years ago where environmental professionals came together to talk about how to bring together Indigenous knowledge and Western science for environmental work. But the conversation steered in a bit of a different direction, where people were talking about why this hasn't worked in the past. People sharing that there's a real lack of trust, a lack of meaningful participation. So potentially outsiders coming in and just taking and viewing peoples as objects of study rather than people to collaborate with. That there was little indigenous control over how TEK, or traditional ecological knowledge, was used, and that TEK was an add-on. So we've heard of this, using it as a sort of box to tick. So my boss says I need traditional knowledge, I'm going to tick this box, but no real meaningful engagement or collaboration. So we need to do something about this, and always keep this in mind when thinking about this work. And thinking about this work in a good way. And when I talk about, when I think about environmental research in a good way, I like to think about a braid of sweetgrass. And now Robin Wall Kimmerer uses a braid of sweetgrass as a metaphor in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, which is an incredible read. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend that book. But I like to use it in a bit of a different way. And when you think of a braid, imagine you have two strands. And let's say these represent Indigenous ways of knowing and Western ways of knowing, and you try to braid those two strands together. If you let go, that braid will unravel. It's not strong enough. You need that third strand, that research or that work in a good way to make that strong braid, to make that strong relationship, to make that work in a good way. So what does in a good way mean? It can mean a lot of things. It can mean a lot of things, and I encourage anyone who's thinking about this work to explore books on Indigenous research methodologies, for example, listen to Indigenous scholars, and talk to communities, because what research in a good way means to one community might differ slightly with another community or nation, for example. Now, this could make for a huge discussion, and I'm just going to mention a few things here today, but again, I encourage you to look into this more. Some things that we could think about when thinking about research in a good way are ensuring work is community-led or having equal partnerships, community-led in addressing issues of concern to communities that you're working with. Ensuring that partnerships have meaningful involvement, have those meaningful relationships, and building trusting relationships. And trusting relationships take time. Building those meaningful, important relationships do take time, and that's something we need to think about. And in those relationships, prioritizing reciprocity and uplifting and ensuring Indigenous values are included and uplifted. So reciprocity being giving back. So giving back to communities through things like community benefits, capacity building, training opportunities, for example, but also giving back to the land and thinking about reciprocity with the earth. Prioritizing respect, respecting cultural protocols, for example, ensuring cultural sensitivity, and this can differ with different communities or nations. Being ethical and clear and transparent, all being part of ethical, so making sure that that's done in a good way and an ethical. Ensuring that communication is open among everyone during all stages and that results are always shared and applicable to the needs and interests of communities. So those are just a few very brief examples, but important to consider. So now we're seeing natural scientists across the world and in Canada thinking about work in a good way, thinking about reconciliation in science. This paper was just recently published. So Towards Reconciliation, 10 calls to action to natural scientists working in Canada. And has a focus on natural sciences because there is an underrepresentation still of Indigenous peoples in this field. and for very good reason, with your knowledge systems and way of knowing not being embraced in a field and in a discipline, not a very inviting place to be. But again, this is changing. This was a headline from a few years ago, and really sort of illustrates why it is so important that we work together, because we are faced with environmental catastrophes, biodiversity collapses, and we need to do something. World Wildlife Fund put a report out a few years ago. Humans have caused 60% of wildlife population drop from 1970 to 2014. More than half the world's wildlife populations have died off, and the vast majority of this loss from human activity. The report says Earth is losing biodiversity at a rate only seen during mass extinctions. And in this report, as covered by US Today, it says that we can be the founders of a global movement that changed our relationship with the planet, that saw us secure a future for all life on Earth, including our own. Or we can be a generation that had its chance, failed to act, and let the Earth slip away. Now, with all these environmental issues facing us today, associated with so many environmental impacts, there are so many things that we need to address. How can we better organize our efforts and come together to address these issues collectively on the things that are most important? So I'm just going to chat a little bit about some work that we have worked on with probably many of you joining us today, in collaboration and being led by Magnetawan First Nation, a Connecting Guardians in a Changing World project and workshop that we had a few years ago, with the intent to bring people together to talk about environmental issues of most concern, in the hopes that people might work together on some of these important issues. Every community is at a different stage, has different specialty in environmental research, for example, has maybe come to know some certain monitoring tools, for example, whereas others are maybe doing other things. So coming together and sharing that knowledge is very helpful in helping us with what we're facing today. So connecting guardians or stewards or environmental caretakers in a changing world and in relation to the environmental changes that we're facing. So this work led by Magnetawan First Nation in partnership with myself when I was at Mount Allison University, but now being at the University of Guelph, with Dr. Deb McGregor from York University and Adam Ford from the University of British Columbia, and bringing people together to talk about what are your concerns. So this was, we invited a representative from the Lands Department, an elder, and a youth, so we could facilitate knowledge transfer from communities in the Upper Great Lakes region of the Robinson-Huron Treaty Area to attend this workshop. And the workshop was held over 2 days. We had about 40 people join us, representing 14 First Nation communities in the region. So for day one, we focused on climate change, and day two, we focused on herbicide use in forestry. And I will let Heather elaborate on that tomorrow when she shares her presentation with you. Now, we decided to elaborate on these two specific topics because if we left it to environmental issues, we could be talking for a month. There are so many things. And after paying careful attention through conferences, through what people had shared with us, through our colleagues, these two environmental issues seem to be of great importance in the region. So I'll elaborate specifically just a little bit due to time constraints to the workshop we held on day one regarding climate change. And so essentially we broke up into smaller groups of sharing circles so we had a chance to listen to everybody's insights. And at each of these sharing circles, there was a facilitator who paid careful attention to responses. We had three main discussion topics or questions. One being, what is your greatest climate change concern related to your community and way of life? Another being, what is your greatest climate change concern related to the environment? And then what is the most important climate change research direction to you and to your community? So with facilitators paying careful attention to what people spoke about, We broke up after discussions and identified the 5 things that people spoke about most. And then we wrote them on these large pieces of paper here, the top 5 things that people talked about for each of the 3 questions. And then we proceeded to engage participants in a dot voting exercise where everyone was given one of these circle stickers for each question and asked to go place that circle on the area that you thought was the most important. So for the first question, greatest climate change concern related to community and way of life. People were very concerned about stating that understanding land is becoming more difficult and unpredictable, that there were decreased opportunities to harvest wildlife and medicines. But what people found was most important was that climate change was affecting traditional and spiritual practices. So for example, being too dry for controlled burns. People also talked about limited capacity of communities to address climate change and that we need to identify where to allocate resources. A common theme of this discussion was that as species disappear, culture disappears. One individual said, when I see species starting to disappear, I see my culture starting to disappear, and to me, that's the worst thing that can happen. Now, for the second question, we also heard this concern, and this was related more to climate change concern related to the environment. People did talk about animal and plant distributions changing. Most people were concerned about animal and plant life cycles changing, but also water cycle and quality changing. Biodiversity shifting, so animal population distributions changing or species declines, and disease and parasites shifting or changing. But what people talked about during this part of the discussion is that climate change impacts to those animals' environment will actually impact our community and way of life. So really, things being really interlinked here, interconnected. And in environmental work, typically, we see that, at least in academic work, we see that the biophysical impacts are often being considered, but rarely the impacts to culture, way of life, and well-being. This needs to change. Humans are part of the ecosystem. Now, for the last discussion topic or question, what is the most important climate change research direction to you in your community? People talked about water quality and quantity, baseline animal and plant inventory and long-term monitoring. But the most important thing that people identified was research and policies that include Indigenous and Western knowledge, but also risk assessment for communities and ecosystem approaches as opposed to species approaches, thinking more holistically. Now, in terms of research and policies that include Indigenous and Western knowledge, people shared that traditional knowledge is scientific knowledge. Indigenous knowledge is equally as valuable as Western science. The value of Indigenous knowledge isn't taken as seriously by Western ways of knowing. Western science, it can contribute, but it's not the be-all end-all. And science can complement our knowledge. So throughout this workshop, people really talked about, really wanting to braid ways of knowing in the climate change or in general environmental work that they do. But the question was raised over and over, how do we do this? And how do we do this in a good way? So taking lead from elders and knowledge holders and youth that shared in these discussions, we are elaborating on this project by now speaking with communities across Canada to try to answer this how. This was an identified need. So how can we do this? How can we braid knowledge systems in a good way? So we're chatting with community members across the country to identify, how have you done this in your own communities? What have you saw that worked? What didn't work? What would you like to see? But also looking into trying to take a two-eyed seeing approach and looking into scientific literature for examples of braiding ways of knowing. Now, this work is just happening right now, but there's a sneak peek into some insights shared with us, some different quotes from our discussions here from Sue Chiblo, who's actually from Garden River First Nation, and she says, from what I've been told, there are prophecies that we have that will come to a point on this planet where we'll have to bring all the peoples and their knowledge together to ensure survival of humanity. And another individual shared that Anishinaabe goes back to the concept that not one person can carry all the knowledge because it would harm that person. When we bring people together, everyone has a little piece of the pie to contribute to the collective. So again, people emphasizing, the importance of engaging in this way. And just a few more pieces shared, emphasizing the need to ensure that this work is considered in a good way. Sue Chiblo goes further to say, I think it all boils back down to relationship, maintaining those relationships between scientists and knowledge holders, and them not being like that helicopter approach where they drop in, extract, and they're gone, which is what so many communities have faced in the past. And another individual shared that it boils down to trust, accountability, and transparency. So more of that work to come in the future, and we hope that we can share it with you in the future. So now just going back to the workshop we did have, the Connecting Guardians in a Changing World workshop, one individual said, and this was a very common theme in the workshop, is that all of us, not just the elders, not just you, everybody, we all need to be working together. So to elaborate a little bit more on that workshop, we ended off the conference with a really awesome hands-on event where we invited Scales Nature Park to come in, and people got to touch and interact with reptiles, really wanting to ensure that we had youth involved, and as you can see down there at the bottom picture, looking at a rattlesnake. So prioritizing youth involvement. So another thing, thinking about this work in a good way, ensuring that we're involving our youth as the next generation and caretakers and change makers. So this discussion, as well as many discussions on environmental issues facing us today, can be quite depressing. There's, as biodiversity is collapsing and things are happening, it can be really hard to deal with at times, but we saw hope. One individual shared, that's one of the advantages of traditional knowledge, is there is hope. And so on that note, I want to share with you a story that was shared with me by Elder Andrea Colfer from Elsie Booktook in Mi'kma'ki. And it's a hummingbird story. And so in this story, there was a forest fire, a large forest fire, and all of the animals gathered on a little island. And while they were on that island watching their homes burn, scared, this little hummingbird went back and forth. They saw it going back and forth, and it was dipping down to the water, grabbing a mouthful and bringing it over to the fire. And the animals looked at that hummingbird and they said, "What are you doing?" And the hummingbird looked at them and said, "I'm doing what I can." Imagine we all did what we could. If there were many hummingbirds gathering water and bringing it to that fire, imagine the kind of change that could happen. So from that work and from the work that we do, prioritizing research and next steps in a good way, taking lead from and addressing what matters most to communities, elders, knowledge holders, youth, guiding work. So we talked about some of the next steps of this project, but there are many sort of spin-off projects taking lead, and you'll hear more about that when Heather presents her work tomorrow, coming from this workshop. But all this work engaging in two-eyed seeing for the environment in a good way. Now, in thinking about engaging together in two-eyed seeing and ensuring it's done in a good way, I like to think of the Two-Row Wampum as a framework for partnership. The Two-Row Wampum is a 400- or 500-year-old treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch. It's a framework for partnership, and represented in this, you see these two purple lines. They each represent a vessel, one being a Haudenosaunee vessel, one being a Dutch vessel, traveling along a river, with these three white lines also representing peace, equity, and empowerment. So these vessels travel along the river in a mutual engagement of coexistence and peace, without interfering into the affairs of one another, respecting one another, but being there to work together for the greater good of the river, or in the case of the work we've been talking about today, for the environment. So I believe that we can build some incredible partnerships when engaging in two-eyed seeing research in a good way and ensuring it is founded in an ethical space. Partnerships in co-monitoring, co-research, co-management, collectively, collaboratively working towards reconciling ways of knowing for the environment. So leaving you with a quote from the work that we're currently doing, where one individual has shared, I'm thinking super positive about this. We could disrupt the way that science works and change it. So I would like to say miigwech to everyone being part of this change, helping science advance, being inclusive of all ways of knowing, and to say that in your efforts, if people tell you that you can't, like people have told me, tell them that we can and that we will. Miigwech, thank you so much for listening. It has been such a pleasure to be here.
Wow, Jessie, obviously every time you speak, I'm just in awe. You have a wonderful way with words, and I want to say big, huge miigwech for sharing your perspective, your knowledge, and the stories that you've been told. I love that hummingbird story, how it's a story of hope, which I think now more than ever we need to have, and we need to continue to work together and just make sure that we're connecting with each other. I know it's difficult these days to stay connected and to be connected with each other and the land, but having you speak here has certainly helped rejuvenate that connection for me, for sure. So we're getting lots of miigwech and miigweches in the chat, which I hope you're seeing. So thank you so much for being here. I can think back to that workshop. It seems so long ago, yet so close, pre-COVID times, that we were able to gather like that. So hopefully in the future, we'll be able to do that again. So miigwech, Jessie. So at this time, if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask Jessie, similarly, you can pop it in the Q&A. I don't see any that are coming through right now. I did have one. I was contacted a little while ago about an individual, and I figured this would be a perfect question for you, Jessie. What is the most ethical and appropriate way to approach a community? As we know, consult is not necessarily consent. So if they wanted to do something similar to the workshop that you put on and connect each other that way, what do you suggest is the best way to do that?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And that's actually a question I probably get at the majority of presentations that I share with people. People are so eager to work together, which is wonderful. But going back to thinking about things in a good way, we have to always ensure that we are not trying to tack, communities on to existing projects, for example. There are many scholars out there that have strengths in so many different things and could really help with some of those projects that are important to Indigenous communities. So with that, I like to also emphasize that building relationships is incredibly important, and maybe as opposed to just approaching a community, for example, and thinking about one specific project, to build that relationship slowly, again, which takes time. And thinking about time, like that's something that we need to really consider in the foundations of the institutions and employment agencies that we work for, is that time often isn't built into those positions. I think that's something that we really need to change and think about. But often I like to suggest that, as many of you here today as part of this conference, is a great way to hear what some communities are working on, and maybe you'll have some expertise that could be helpful, and that might be a good way to reach out to say, hey, I heard that you need this, like I might be able to help. So yeah, definitely a lot of important considerations for sure.
We have another question here. What do you find are the most common barriers or challenges to weaving these knowledges while working in communities?
While working, so I guess in my own experience, some of the challenges are that there are these foundations set up by through basically Western or Eurocentric foundations. And often you have so many people eager to learn and to be inclusive, but not having that background knowledge, because like so many going to school, having this inclusive approach was not taught. So there's a lot of teaching and sharing to do. So time, I think it takes a lot of time to do that, but time that is moving forward, and that we are seeing a lot of awesome progress made.
Yeah, and I think the quote you shared, even though it was a little bit of an older quote, that Western science is catching up, I think that is totally appropriate. And although slow, change is happening, and it's wonderful to see and to be a part of as well. And as you said, to everybody participating here today, just even being here is wonderful to see and to have, and to be able to have the space to do that. So yeah, very, very wonderful stuff going on. Another question here, when talking about the braid, you mentioned the third braid as research in a good way. Can or is research a surrogate for learning, or do you mean something more specific in research?
Yeah, so, well, it could be research in a good way, work in a good way, engagement in a good way, learning in a good way. I think that, in that context, I think that when thinking about braiding together multiple ways of knowing, perspectives, knowledge systems, ways of stewarding the land, for example, it's always important that no matter what you're doing that, to think about, what are some of the important considerations that I need to tie into that, to make sure that, I'm not just coming and taking, or, so I don't know if that addresses that question.
Yeah, so I guess in kind of a similar way, we just have another question here. In my position as consultation coordinator, I have experienced conflict between traditional knowledge and science. Is a good way mean being open to scientific knowledge as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think sometimes that there will be conflict, and this doesn't necessarily mean that, one way of seeing or one perspective is right or wrong over the other, but that might lead, like in thinking about science, it's all about discovery, right? And so if something sees one thing one way and another sees something another way, maybe there's a piece of the puzzle that you're missing there, right? So maybe that's an indication that we need to explore more. But I think and thinking about braiding ways of knowing, yeah, I think it goes all ways, and that everyone's way of knowing and seeing the world is valuable. And although Indigenous knowledge and science is very standalone, when being inclusive, we might see things that we didn't see before, and not only going just for Western science and saying, Indigenous knowledge systems, but again, I mentioned like thinking about, perspectives from different Indigenous nations, even, for example. So
yeah. So just another one here from Marty Martel, if I said that correctly. Jesse, I really enjoyed your talk. In my opinion, the term Western science can be confusing sometimes. It seems more related to knowledge than the actual method of testing a hypothesis. It seems to me it relates more to making sure the research is inclusive of First Nations knowledge when using the scientific method to test a hypothesis. Quote, the scientific method is defined as a method of research in which a question is identified. Relevant data is gathered, a hypothesis is formulated from the data, and the hypothesis is empirically tested, end quote. Would you agree?
Would I agree in the definition?
I think they're asking if you would agree that Western science seems more related to knowledge than the actual method of testing a hypothesis. So relating more to making sure the research is inclusive of First Nations knowledge, using the scientific method to test that hypothesis.
Well, I think how we define science is important as well, and how we think about science is not, I guess it's hard for me to understand the question. It's pretty loaded. There's a lot of aspects to that.
Yeah.
But thinking about science and hypothesis testing and things like that. So I guess so Indigenous peoples engage in hypothesis testing as well, although it might not be, outlined the way that we might see it, but we think in terms of, testing hypotheses and trying different medicines, for example, learning, habitat selection and things like that. But some of the differences is that knowledge is transferred orally. So just because it was transferred orally does not make it any more relevant than something that was written down through a Western science approach. So each of these ways of doing things being a little bit different, but still equally valuable, important for the overall, thinking about science and discovery and coming to know. I don't know if that.
Yeah, no, you did a wonderful job. I love reading it. I was like, oh, I hope I'm doing a good job here. But no, that was great. So we don't have any others. Oh, there's another one here. More so just a comment. Listening to all the conversations today, this is from Marilyn Caprell. Listening to all the conversations today, I would like to add that traditional knowledge comes from the original instructions of how to take care of the land. Creator's gift of knowledge to us, the humans, of how to take care of our gifts. Great comment, Marilyn Miigwech. To follow up on likely the question that you just answered, Jesse, how can Indigenous ways of knowing be incorporated throughout the science process in addition to just knowledge/data collection?
Yeah, and that is something that we are actually as part of. So I mentioned that spinning off from the concerns and needs from the workshop that we did as part of that project as well. So talking to community members to answer that question. So there's a lot in the scientific process. There's a lot of different aspects, and there's so two-eyed seeing. So Dr. Deb McGregor actually mentioned this once, is that when we're thinking about two-eyed seeing, we need to think about two-eyed seeing in the whole process. So not just in data collection or analysis, but in thinking about that through the entire stage of research. So guiding the research, informing the research, thinking about data collection, knowledge sharing, but also jointly interpreting results, for example. So working together throughout the entire process is I think important, and we're starting to see that a little bit more, which is really great.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Chimigwech for answering those questions from our audience. Great questions and comments, everybody. So I believe now that kind of finishes our presentations for today. So again, Chimigwech Jesse, Dr. Pop, sorry, and the other presenters today. It was so wonderful to have you here, and we really enjoyed today, and I hope all the attendees did as well. So to kind of finish things off today, Greg Mason is going to hop on and give you a little bit of a preface for tomorrow. Again, we know that this is a large time commitment, this 3-day conference, but we really hope that you'll be able to attend. And he's going to do his best to convince you to do that.
Ani, everybody. Greg Mason, Indigenous. I'm the general manager for the Georgian Bay Minnedogamie Biosphere, one of the lead partners on the Mamwe Anjiakazewin initiative. It's a community-nominated priority place that exists here on the coast of Georgian Bay. This is a federally funded, community-driven initiative. We're working on developing and strengthening relationships among governments and organizations and community to improve how lands are managed to benefit species at risk, stewardship, and protection in this region. Tomorrow, the range of speakers that we have will highlight various aspects of this broad regional program and partnership, where we're currently at, where we hope to go and develop in the future. And we also hope to hear from you about what activities we could be engaging in differently or better now and in the years to come. So we really look forward to seeing and hearing from you tomorrow. Chimigwech.
Yeah, so hopefully everybody will see you guys back here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Again, I just like to emphasize today and tomorrow are being recorded. So if you missed part of today or are going to miss part of tomorrow. The sessions will be recorded and shared on our YouTube, which we will pass along after this. And as Greg said, we are hoping to get some feedback from you in the form of our short survey, which is where you'll also find the door prizes. So we'll be releasing that tomorrow to all registrants. So again, if you can't hop on tomorrow, no worries, you'll still get that form. And we'd love to hear from you. There's also a spot in there where any questions that you had or did not necessarily want to ask during this, that you can ask during that time and submit them, and they will be either answered to you, or we will have them as part of our discussions for day 3, which is going to be kind of an open, very casual, informal conversations about some of the things that have been discussed today and will be discussed tomorrow, and just general coastal conservation initiatives. So with that, big thank you to everyone who was here. I also obviously want to shout out Delana and Katrina, who are with me here today, who were helping in the background. Could not have done this without them. And I am very much looking forward to tomorrow, which I hope you all are as well. So thank you so much. And I'm not sure what the weather is like where everyone is here, but hopefully we can all get out and enjoy the rest of the day. So Chimi Gwech, and see you all tomorrow.